Leicester. The northbound exit at junction 2 for the A58 at Bury is closed because of an accident. There are long delays towards there with queues from junction 4 at Simister Island. In Suffolk, the A14 is blocked westbound at junction 44 near Bury St Edmunds with queues from junction 45. In Cambridgeshire on the A14, there's a lane closed westbound where a vehicle caught fire just after junction 34 near Cambridge with queues from junction 36 for the A11 near Newmarket. And in West Sussex, the A24 is partly blocked each way where someone's broken down on the roundabout at the junction with the A283. Washington causing queues. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday from 8 p.m.
Well, I'm joined now by royal biographer and former royal photographer, Ian Lloyd. Ian,
hello, Jacob.
Thank you Good evening. Thank you for joining me. This is going to be great, isn't it? The opportunity to go around and see where the King comes onto the balcony from. Really interesting insight to how Buckingham Palace works.
It's exciting. I went yesterday, there was a press preview, and the thing that struck me first of all is that if you're the King and or the late Queen and you're on the balcony, you can't see the Mall. I mean, we all see people coming down from the top, thousands of people crowding in towards Buckingham Palace. They can't see it because of this great monument to Queen Victoria called the Queen Victoria Memorial, or they call it the wedding cake, but it blocks the view. So apparently the King has a TV in there, and the late Queen did as well. So what they do is they when they're waiting to come on, they're watching the TV to see how the crowd's getting nearer the palace. And the other thing that struck me is when we were on it looking down, is you can actually see individual faces in the crowd out there, because we looked out, so they do get a good view of what's happening directly underneath the palace,
So they can see individuals. So if there's a friendly face in the crowd, they can see that person and possibly even wave. But they can't see that enormous mass of people you get at the big events that goes back towards Admiralty Arch.
The other thing I learned is there's a great historical link, because the person that put the east wing on the palace, because it was originally 3 sides, and Queen Victoria had, of course, 9 children, so they had to build a 4th side for all the nurseries and things. Edward Blord was the architect, but the master builder was Thomas Cubitt.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's 9:30 on Thursday, the 18th of July, live across the United Kingdom. This is Britain's Newsroom with Ben Leo in for Andrew Pearce and me, Bev Turner.
Very good morning to you. Stopping the boats. Britain seeks a new migrant deal with the EU as the Prime Minister offers to lead the continent's fight against illegal migration at a summit in Oxfordshire. Catherine Forster has more.
Yes, good morning from Blenheim Palace, where the new Prime Minister says that this event is going to fire the starting gun on this government's new approach to Europe. I'll bring you the details shortly.
How worrying. Lib Dem leader Sir Ed Davey, he pulled numerous stunts, of course, during the election campaign. Well, he faces a Post Office inquiry today over his role in that scandal. Do you think you're going to see an apology from him? Maybe not.
Maybe his biggest challenge yet. Elsewhere, COVID failures. The first report published from the COVID inquiry later today is expected to be highly critical of the Conservative government's handling of the pandemic.
And breaking overnight, President Joe Biden has pulled out of a campaign speech after testing positive for COVID. Didn't mean to sound so cheerful about that. My point being, do you remember when COVID was just the excuse to get out of anything you didn't particularly want to do, even running as president, maybe?
Do you want to come out for dinner this weekend? I think I've got some symptoms I need to test.
Anyway, apparently he's got mild symptoms. He's fine. But what does this mean? Is this going to be... He said, didn't he, yesterday, if I get ill, it's the only time I'll step down from being president. Well,
interesting timing. Then hours later, he tests positive for COVID. And he's had, I think, 5 vaccines, by the way, and a booster as recently as December 2023. So there we go. Just saying.
Good, those vaccines. gbnews.com/your say. First, the very latest news with Sam Francis.
Bev and Ben, thank you very much and good morning to you. It's just coming up to 33 minutes past 9 and the top story from the newsroom. The COVID inquiry is set to release its first report this lunchtime, which is expected to expose widespread failures to prepare for a pandemic. It will also make recommendations on how the UK might better prepare for a future outbreak. Evidence heard so far at the inquiry suggests the government's response was affected by public health cutbacks. At least 8 more reports will follow today's publication. In the US, Joe Biden has, as we heard, tested positive for coronavirus. The president was last seen walking off of Air Force One after cancelling a campaign speech in Las Vegas. Biden's diagnosis comes as concerns grow about his age, with top Democrats, his own party, questioning his re-election bid. Well, this morning, an interview's been released with Biden suggesting he would pull out of the race if medical professionals advised him to.
I made a serious mistake in the whole debate. And look, when I originally ran, you may remember it, I said I was going to be a transitional candidate. And I thought that I'd be able to move from this, just pass it on to someone else. But I didn't anticipate things getting so divided. And quite frankly, I think the only thing age brings is a little bit of wisdom. And I think I've demonstrated that I know how to get things done for the country.
Here, Sir Keir Starmer is hosting around 45 leaders from across Europe at a summit that he hopes will fire the starting gun on a new relationship with the EU following Brexit. Support for Ukraine, migration and energy are all expected to be on the agenda, and it's being hosted at Blenheim Palace in Oxfordshire. That's the birthplace of Winston Churchill. The families of 2 British men reported missing in Sweden are appealing for information on their whereabouts. They say it's feared the men were victims of a double murder. 33-year-old Juan Fuentes and Farouk Abdul Razik, who's 37, travelled for a business trip there but haven't come home. Officers are investigating after 2 bodies were found in a burnt-out car in Malmö on Sunday. Local media report they were shot, though they're still working to identify the victims. 1 person has died and 71 people have been rescued after a migrant boat sank in the Channel late last night. All those on board the vessel did end up in the water but were picked up in a joint rescue operation between the UK and French authorities. Wages have grown by 5.7% in the 3 months to May, but that's a drop from the 6% growth in the first 3 months of the year. Meanwhile, unemployment's remained unchanged. Official figures show the jobless rate is now 4.5%. However, there's good news on inflation. It has dropped to the lowest level since 2021. And an experimental drug has been found to extend the lifespan of mice by 25%, and it's thought it could also work in humans. Researchers behind the trials say the animals were injected with an antibody called IL-11, and the treatment cut cancer deaths, reduced chronic inflammation and saw less muscle wasting, all key signs of ageing. I know plenty of people here who would sign up for that. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sam Francis. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thanks, Sam, and a very good morning to you at home. Hope you're well. Ben in for Andrew Pearce this week alongside Bev Turner, of course, on Britain's Newsroom, live across the UK. Now, have you seen what's been going on in Milwaukee, the US, at the Republican National Convention, Bev?
I have. And there's been some interesting clips overnight. JD Vance has been speaking, of course, now, Trump's running mate. And there's a little podcast. It's called The News Agents. It's an alternative media brand, which you wouldn't be interested in. But anyway, the host, Emily Maitlis, who you will know probably from her life on the BBC, she caught up with Reform UK leader Nigel Farage. This is in Milwaukee. Just have a little look at this exchange. Let us know what you think.
I thought you were giving all your time to Clacton now as its newest MP.
Well, I'm allowed to come to America on a trip like this, particularly in these circumstances. I mean, I had planned to come originally to America and to be here for a few months. And I made a decision, no, I'm going to run for Clacton. But given the circumstances, it was right that I came.
Because at one point you said you wouldn't be running in Clacton because you wanted to give your time to the US, but now you are the new Clacton MP, but are here in the US just, 2 weeks after getting elected? Because this feels more exciting?
No, I'm just here for a couple of days. That's it. I'll be back at the weekend. And no, I mean, look, what happened on Saturday could have been the most disastrous event.
But why did he need you?
Well, that's a matter for, his team to answer, not me. No, listen, it was right that I came.
Right for who?
It was the right thing to do. I have friends. I don't know whether you do or not. Maybe you don't. But I have friends, and when they're in having a tough time, it's right to go and support them.
And is that the sense you've got, that he's having a tough time right now?
He nearly died.
To state the obvious. And then there's a really, really long silence. And then she said, is he having a tough time at the moment? Again. And Nigel Farage said, he nearly died.
I mean, he nearly had his head blown off. Could you imagine the course of the US and the world today if that happened? I mean, some people have responded to that clip online saying, hilarious, nicely played, Emily Maitlis. What's hilarious about it?
The trouble is...
Where's the gotcha?
And this is what's going to happen to Nigel Farage now that he is an MP, is that he will, every time he steps foot outside of Clacton, there's going to be somebody like Emily Maitlis with a gotcha question trying to cast him as something, actually, frankly, that I don't think he is. And you can see there from Nigel, I don't know what you thought, Ben, but it's his typical honesty. He's just trying to give a really straight answer. He's not up to any sort of mischief. Like, she's digging for something that just, frankly, is not there.
And there's this narrative building around Nigel that, he shouldn't be doing this or shouldn't be doing that because he should be focusing his attention on his constituents in Clacton. If you ask me, I mean, I'm sure Nigel will be the best MP he can for his seat and his constituents, but I don't think the majority of Clacton voters voted for Nigel because they thought he was the best man to be dealing with their complaints against the water board or
the one-way system
dealing with their parking permits. I think there's a wider issue at play here, and that's why they put him in that seat.
Yeah, and so the sneery tone actually about the Republican National Conference from other broadcasters and journalists I found absolutely disgusting.
There was a separate clip with Emily Maitlis relaying back her report to Lewis Goodall and who's the other chap?
John Sopel, another former BBC.
All former BBC, I mean, Labour activists, let's be frank. And she's saying, I just don't understand. It's all cult-like behaviour. These people, I mean, ex-celebrities who are trying to revive their careers like Russell Brand. Russell Brand's got 8 or 9 million subscribers on Rumble or YouTube or wherever he hosts his show. He's probably earning more money now than he ever has before.
It just showed for me the way that, I'd say, the political left, broadcast left, are sneering at that event is the distinction between those people who are out of touch with the people that JD Vance appeals to, the real people, the working people, the Rust Belt, as he calls it in America. We might call it the Red Wall, the working people. I don't like those terms. I think they're a little bit reductive. But just, do you know what it is? It's just not the little Westminster elite.
No.
It's not Emily Maitlis's little dinner party set who like to walk around, art gallery openings on a Wednesday night in Westminster. It's just not those people, and that's OK. And when you hear broadcasters like that just be so detached, I'm just glad we have us.
Instead of sneering at these people, why don't you try and work out why this momentum is building? Who knows?
Ask why. Right, moving on. Let us know what you think anyway. gbnews.com/your say. So, it's a big day for the new Prime Minister who's taking his first steps to resetting the relationship with the UK and Europe this morning.
Yeah, so he's hosting the European Political Community Summit today with around 50 European leaders in attendance, and he'll offer to lead the continent's fight against illegal migration.
So our political correspondent, Catherine Forster, is there in a very beautiful, sunshiny Blenheim Palace in Oxfordshire this morning. Lucky you. Catherine, what are we expecting?
Yes, good morning, Ben and Bev. Well, first of all, isn't Sir Keir Starmer, the new Prime Minister, incredibly lucky with the timing of the general election? Because within a week of him becoming Prime Minister, he was off to the NATO summit, meeting lots of world leaders. And now, a week on from that, he's hosting this summit with about 45 or so leaders of EU countries and non-EU European countries at this summit. This is the fourth of these. This EPC, as it's it's called, was the brainchild of Emmanuel Macron. They began after Russia invaded Ukraine, and they're going to be talking all things security, of course, in terms of Ukraine, what is going on with Russia's invasion of that country, and what the Europe can do to help, but also a big focus on the challenges of illegal migration, not just something that we're really struggling with here in the United Kingdom, but across the whole of Europe. Some 380,000 people crossed into the European Union illegally last year. That's up about 17% on the year before. So Sir Keir Starmer, of course, they've junked the Rwanda plan that Rishi Sunak said would have started this summer, getting people on planes, said would have acted as a deterrent. They don't have that deterrent now, but Sir Keir Starmer saying cracking down on the smuggling gangs is the way to deal with it. Now, of course, to do that, he needs to work with other countries in Europe, because these people are crossing Europe to get to the Channel. Now, ultimately, he'd like some sort of returns agreement with the EU. There is zero chance of that being agreed today, or indeed anytime soon, because the EU itself is bogged down with disagreements as to how to deal with this. Also, because Ursula von der Leyen is not here. She is trying to get reselected as president of the European Commission. But there may be progress with France. He's meeting with Emmanuel Macron later. It may be that some agreement is reached to possibly take some EU asylum seekers in exchange for taking people back to France. We will wait to see. But there's nothing easy about this. And without the Rwanda plan, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with the numbers in the Channel this summer.
Thank you, Catherine. Catherine Forster there. We'll be going back to her later this morning. Now, former Minister for Europe, Denis McShane, joins us now. Good morning, Denis. Here he is. Well done. There you are. Hi, Denis. Right. Do you know what Catherine just made me consider there when she said about the fact that hasn't Sir Keir Starmer been lucky with the timing? Because the timing of the election means that Sir Keir Starmer now has a summer glad-handing with all of these wonderful occasions which were already in the diary, like NATO, EU summit, walking around in the sunshine. If he'd handed him this victory in November or December, he'd gone into a miserable, dark nights of Christmas, and everyone would have been miserable. Does it make you contemplate on the timing yet again of this election?
Sure. As Napoleon said, I don't want good generals, I want lucky generals. And thanks to Rishi Sunak, Sir Keir Starmer, PM in terms of starting in office, and I can remember in my lifetime, big cheese at NATO in Washington before the horrible attack on Donald Trump. Now he's hosting nearly 50 European leaders at Blenheim Palace. Blenheim Palace given to the Duke of Marlborough. You mentioned Churchill being born there, descendant of the Duke of Marlborough. Why? Because at the beginning of the 18th century, Britain sent a giant army into Europe. Why? To make sure the markets were open for Britain. And that, I think, is now going to be the challenge for all the business community and sensible people. How do we reopen the markets of Europe to British goods, British professionals, British consultants? The boats thing, it's a small play, if I may, so I don't want to talk too long, but the EU is absolutely overwhelmed by migrants and undocumented asylum seekers, as you rightly said. We're not alone. And they've created now almost a small army, a division, a military division called Frontex, 10, 12,000 people, that is now putting in very harsh measures. I mean, a lot of my Liberal friends don't like it, to try and slow down and stop this immigration wave. It's not an English problem anymore, it's a European one.
But, Denis, if we have this increased trade with Europe and we have closer commercial ties, the cost of that is going to have to be a quid pro quo. You're going to have to take some more migrants.
No. I mean, look, be realistic. I mean, we've lost about 4 or 5% of our GDP. Liz Truss was rightly talking about the OBR problem in terms of the way the government presented its King's Speech laws yesterday. But the OBE also is saying 4 or 5%. Every British firm is unable to trade as once it could trade. And Boris Johnson promised us in 2016, I quote, "You will be able to trade, you'll be able to live, you'll be able to work, you'll be able to travel in Europe." And then suddenly 4 years later, he reverse ferreted, as he did on so many things, and shut it all down. So Britain's got this big problem. All our businesses do. We're not talking about returning to the EU, rejoining. We've got to solve some of these problems. And I just hope Sir Keir Starmer, who's cautious, who's steady, one step at a time, might be able to begin that process.
OK, all right, Dennis. Thank you so much for joining us. We're watching live pictures there of Sir Keir Starmer welcoming. Have you noticed the body language? Honestly, the body language is so funny when these leaders come together. They're so close. It's like a power play of who can be closer with all of them. I've noticed they stand very, very close together and then they wait to see who's going to be the first one to back off. Sir Keir Starmer, you know, this is on our soil, I guess, the first role as our Prime Minister.
There were some commentators yesterday saying that Starmer looks like he's been in the job for 10 years. Do you think he looks comfortable?
No, I don't think he does look entirely comfortable, honestly. He doesn't. He's a bit socially awkward anyway. I mean, you don't have to be entirely comfortable, do you, in these situations? But, I mean, he is standing there greeting people like it is his own house.
Yeah. Right, still to come, Lib Dem leader Sir Ed Davey, who may have won your hearts during the election campaign. Did he win yours?
I find him very entertaining.
Yeah, well, look, anyway, today he's facing a grilling at the Post Office inquiry very shortly over his role in the scandal, as he was, of course, Post Office Minister at the time. He has apologised before. Will he apologise again? Who knows? Back in a tick, you're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Don't go anywhere.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
King Charles has launched his own aftershave, costing, wait for it, an eye-watering 135 quid for a 100 millilitre bottle, promising buyers that they can smell just like the gardens of his Highgrove country pile. Now, this is something that Meghan Markle would do, surely not the King. Is this a case of King Charles selling out, watering down the brand, just like Meghan? Well, join me now to discuss this is the royal broadcaster, Helena Chard. Helena, welcome to the show.
Martin,
often on this show, we've had a pop at Meghan Markle, the Sussexers, for selling out, for flogging strawberry jam, and now the King is flogging Pong. Is this really the right royal thing to do?
Do you know what? So the joy of luxury Highgrove splash, you know, at the end of the day, Highgrove is such a special place, and the Highgrove shop sells amazing things on there. And as we know, the profit actually goes towards charity. So it's the King's Foundation, which was formed in 1986. Profits go towards educational and training, and it's all to do with this sort of sustainable world. But not to forget as well the charitable aspect and the whole ethos of the King's Foundation, and that's so important. This is not just something that's going up on the website and just being sold purely to go into someone's pocket. So I think, you know, all in all, I think everyone should have a look at the Highgrove website and see what's on for sale. I mean, there are lots of really lovely, I think, pretty fairly priced products, and even more so, go and see the gardens. You know, as we know, King Charles is a keen environmentalist, and the gardens are fabulous.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained. I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
9:52, this is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Bev and Ben.
Good morning to you. Now, any moment now, the Post Office Horizon IT inquiry continues with Sir Ed Davey taking the stand.
So the Liberal Democrat leader faced intense criticism over the scandal, of course, during his time as Postal Affairs Minister.
And according to reports, Davey initially refused to meet campaigning sub-postmaster Sir Alan Bates 15 years ago. So let's speak now to Myra Philp. Is it Philp? Philip. Apologies. Need to get my eyes checked. Her mother was a wrongly convicted sub-postmaster. Good morning to you. Thank you for joining us. Very much appreciate it. Your mother's story is, if you don't mind me saying, quite tragic. It touched me when I was reading it this morning, Myra, because she has now passed away and she hasn't been here to see kind of justice served, has she?
That's correct. She she died not knowing that she was correct, that Horizon was a flawed system, and that, you know, that caused all the heartache and loss. So, yeah.
And Myra, when you saw, I don't know whether you saw much of Sir Ed Davey during the election campaign, going down water slides, bungee jumping and bouncing around on sort of inflatables. Knowing that he played such a significant role in that difficult period of time with your mum, how did you react to those images?
I'm of the opinion that basically they're all as culpable as each other over all of the years. So I think basically every party had its failings.
Nigel, Myra, apologies. What's your memories of the time when your mother was going through this hell with the Post Office? Can you remember what it was like for you and the family?
Well, I was her registered partner in the business, and at the time we shouted as loudly as we could in every quarter we could, because we knew Horizon was wrong, but nobody would believe us. Even the Postmasters Federation didn't help. They ended up speaking to my mother like she was a thief. And in the end, when we had the early morning swoop audit, it was just horrible. I mean, a post office bully chased her across the village square, telling her that she wasn't going to be prosecuted only because of her age.
Wow.
And we were £70,000 down. We were really struggling to keep the business going. We couldn't borrow any more money. And then you know, we didn't have a day in court to defend ourselves.
Are you still angry? And what do you want to see from Sir Ed Davey today?
Angry, yes, very angry. I've been furious throughout. Sir Ed Davey today, I know he will apologise. He's already done it. If he means what he says, he'll carry on campaigning to try and get proper redress from the compensation schemes, from the thousands of us who still don't have our money.
Myra, have you had any compensation so far, or even any awareness of what you might get and when?
I was made an offer. The £70,000 that went missing, that they stole from us, they offered me 50 because that's all they could find in their records. And part of the problem is that the Post Office has always held the cards. They have records because they couldn't find the record of the other 20,000 that they need to repay me, never mind compensation. I wasn't offered it. So now we're in dispute resolution with them, which is like being put on trial again, basically.
Yeah. I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. Well, we'll be watching today, Myra, and wishing you all the best. Honestly, I think it's appalling that it took a drama to bring this to the public eye. Right, thanks so much for your time this morning. Right, up next is Sir Keir Starmer getting into bed with the EU. Well, if he has, he's got a choice of bedrooms in that building. We're going to bring you the latest from the EU Leaders Summit at Blenheim Palace. That's all next.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Tyne and Wear on the A19, there's a lane closed northbound after an accident between the Harrington interchange and Pennywell, taking 40 minutes in queues from the Seaton interchange. On the M66 in Greater Manchester, the northbound exit at junction 2. The A58 at Bury is closed because of an accident with queues from junction 4 at Simister Island. The M6 in Warwickshire is blocked northbound by an accident between junctions 3 and 4 from Coventry to the M42, causing queues. In Suffolk, the A14 is blocked westbound at junction 44 at Bury with queues from junction 46. In Cambridgeshire on the A14, there's a lane closed westbound where a vehicle caught fire just after junction 34 near Cambridge with queues from junction 36 from the A11 near Newmarket. The A1M in Hertfordshire is blocked southbound just after junction 7 south of Stevenage with queues from junction 9 at Letchworth. And on the M26 in Kent, there are westbound queues approaching the roadworks at the M25.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
It's our summer treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest cash prize of the year so far. With an extra £30,000 in your bank account this year, you could take the ultimate financial holiday and send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. £30,000 could get you those nagging home improvements done, buy that brand new car, or just enable you to kick back and relax for the rest of the year. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2 or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us. Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions that raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return. And a few surprises along the way. Might be cold in this studio. That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9 only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Very good morning to you. It's 10 a.m. on Thursday, 18th of July, live across the United Kingdom. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Ben Leo, in for Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
So, stopping the boats. Britain seeks a new migrant deal with the EU as the Prime Minister offers to lead the continent's fight against legal migration at a summit in Oxfordshire. Catherine Forster has more.
Yes, welcome to Blenheim Palace, where the new Prime Minister says that this meeting will fire the starting gun on this government's new approach to Europe. He wants lots of things from the European Union. Easier said than done, of course. I'll bring you more details shortly.
And elsewhere, Lib Dem leader Sir Ed Davey, who pulled numerous entertaining stunts during the election campaign, he faces the Post Office inquiry today over his role during the Horizon IT scandal. Will we see another apology from him this morning?
And breaking overnight, President Joe Biden has pulled out of a campaign speech after testing positive for COVID.
And sticking with America, Donald Trump's running mate J.D. Vance delivers a speech at the Republican convention as he ushers in a new era of American politics.
I will give you everything I have to serve you and to make this country a place where every dream you have for yourself, your family, and your country will be possible once again.
Let us know what you think about JD Vance, gbnews.com/you'll say, because as far as I can see, he is exercising all the right people. The left, certainly in America, getting their knickers in a twist about his appointment.
I like him, I have to say, and I love this idea. I mean, he does represent the American dream. He came from poverty with an addicted mother who actually was talking last night saying that she'd been clean for 10 years. But also, I love the fact that he's not a victim mindset. Because of his background, he's got that very empowering kind of vision of the world. Do you want to do well? Well, you're in a country where you can do well. And I think we haven't seen enough of that. Right, a lot more to get through this morning between now and midday. First to the very latest news with Sam Francis.
Very good morning to you from the newsroom. It's just after 10 o'clock and the top story this morning. The COVID inquiry is set to release its first report this lunchtime, which is expected to expose widespread failures to prepare for a pandemic. It will also make recommendations on how the UK might better prepare for a future outbreak. Evidence heard so far suggests the government's response was affected by public health cutbacks. At least 8 more reports will follow today's publication. And in the US, Joe Biden has, as we've heard, tested positive for coronavirus. The president was last seen walking off Air Force One after cancelling a speech in Las Vegas last night. Biden's diagnosis comes as concerns grow about his age, with some top Democrats questioning his re-election bid. And this morning, an interview's been released with Biden suggesting he could pull out of the race if medical professionals advised him to.
I made a serious mistake in the whole debate. And look, when I originally ran, you may remember it, I said I was going to be a transitional candidate. And I thought that I'd be able to move from this, just pass it on to someone else. But I didn't anticipate things getting so divided. And quite frankly, I think the only thing age brings is a little bit of wisdom. And I think I've demonstrated that I know how to get things done for the country.
Sir Keir Starmer is hosting around 45 leaders from across Europe today as he hosts a summit that he hopes will fire the starting gun on a new relationship with the EU following Brexit. Support for Ukraine, migration and energy are all expected to be on the agenda. It's being hosted at Blenheim Palace, as you can see there on your screen. Sir Keir Starmer just hiding away at the entrance there as he welcomes his guests. That's taking place in Oxfordshire, the birthplace of Winston Churchill. The families of 2 British men reported missing in Sweden are appealing for information on their whereabouts. It's feared the men could have been victims of a double murder. The 33-year-old and the 37-year-old travelled for a business trip but haven't come home. Officers are investigating after 2 bodies were found in a burnt-out car in Malmö at the weekend. Local media there say that they could have been shot, though police are still working to identify the victims found in the car. 1 person has died and 71 people have been rescued after a migrant boat sank in the Channel late last night. All those on board the vessel ended up in the water but were picked up in a joint rescue operation between the UK and French authorities. 2 prominent MPs, both former government ministers overseeing the Post Office, are being questioned at the Horizon IT inquiry this morning. Labour's Pat McFadden was Postal Affairs Minister and Sir Ed Davey, now leader of the Liberal Democrats, also held that role. They're expected to be asked about errors in the Horizon IT system, which of course led to sub-postmasters being wrongly convicted of fraud. An inquiry examining claims that women and girls were mistreated in police custody will be published this lunchtime. Dame Vera Baird has been reviewing allegations linked to Greater Manchester Police and how they've dealt with people following arrest. The force accepts there are examples of poor standards and practice, but say they have fully engaged with the inquiry. We've heard this morning that wages have grown by 5.7% in the 3 months to May, though it's a drop from the 6% growth in the first 3 months of the year. Meanwhile, unemployment remained unchanged. Official figures show the jobless rate is now 4.5%. An experimental drug has been found to extend the lifespan of mice by 25%, and it's thought it could also work in humans. Researchers behind the trials say the animals were injected with an antibody called IL-11. The treatment cut cancer deaths, reduced chronic inflammation and saw less muscle wasting, all key signs of ageing. A heat health alert has been issued for parts of England, with temperatures set to hit 30 degrees on Friday. The warnings cover the East Midlands, East England, London and the South East from tomorrow through to the weekend. And finally, before we hand back to Ben and Bev, viewers have been tuning in to get a rare peek inside the hidden world of a snake mega den in northern Colorado. But be warned, it could leave you rattled. The 2,000 rattlesnakes can now be viewed online thanks to a round-the-clock webcam, although, as you can see there, they certainly are very tricky to spot. The elusive reptiles are nestling inside the Rocky Mountainside crevices, but the exact location's being kept secret to stop snake lovers or haters from messing with the animals. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'm Sam Francis. Much more on the rattlesnakes coming up in the next half hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Bev and Ben, live across the United Kingdom on GB News.
Now, US President Joe Biden, not sure if you've seen this, but he's tested positive for COVID. So he's had 5 vaccines, a booster most recently as December. But let me just throw back to 2021 when he said this.
The various shots that people are getting now cover that. You're okay. You're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations. Yeah. How about making sure that you're vaccinated so you do not spread the disease to anybody else?
Well, they worked then, didn't they?
OK, so, look, I understand we've moved on from COVID. People don't want to talk about it anymore. I get it. There is the COVID inquiry in the UK today, though, of course, so it's slightly relevant. But my little takeaway from that is we had all that hell during 2021, 2020, 2022. For many years, you know, Joe Biden implemented vaccine passports and mandates on 100 million Americans, government workers, contractors, because the idea was that the vaccines wouldn't stop transmission. So my only point being now, and this is the only thing I'll say about it, because I understand you don't want to go over old ground, but...
oh, I do.
What was that about?
Yeah.
What was that about?
We lost 30,000 care home workers, didn't we, in this country that resigned because of the mandates. And we wish him well, Biden, of course, don't we, Ben? We do. We wish him well, but, of course, it just raises the issue, doesn't it? That will he use this as an excuse now to step aside? Yeah, potentially. I mean, he said hours before he came down with COVID that he'd only step down if he came a cropper with a health ailment or something akin to that. But, you know, just before we leave this, before we park it, you know, people now like to change history and say, it was never said the vaccine stopped transmission. You know, we knew it all along. Well, that's completely not the case. You just saw it there from Joe Biden. Yeah. And the fact they tried to implement vaccine passports and make people take the jabs when arguably they didn't need them, especially young people, is interesting to say the least. But there we go. And on a news issue as well, the European Commission, in fact, the second highest court in Europe yesterday decided that Ursula von der Leyen and the European Commission were wrong to hide details of the vaccine purchase agreements. That was a court ruling yesterday. And, of course, she is currently pitching for leadership of the EU again. They said there was a huge lack of transparency in those contracts and mysteriously disappearing text messages. What do you think? gbnews.com/your say. So, the Prime Minister has taken his first steps to reset the relationship with Europe this morning.
Yes, he's hosting the European Political Community Summit today, surrounded by European leaders. And our political correspondent, Catherine Forster, is at the summit at Blenheim Palace. Drenched in sunshine, Catherine, slightly jealous. What's the latest down there?
Yes, good morning. The sun is beating down. It's rather fabulous. Summer is here at last. So European leaders, about 45 of them all together, still arriving here. There will be a family photo of this group sometime after 11 o'clock. And of course, it's not just the leaders of European Union countries. Everybody in Europe has been invited, with the exception, of course, of Russia and Belarus. This was French President Emmanuel Macron's bright idea as a way of getting everybody in Europe together to talk about challenges that face us. So they'll be talking about security. The agenda was set by Rishi Sunak while he was still Prime Minister, but Sir Keir Starmer will be more than happy with that. So security, of course, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the possibility of a Donald Trump presidency, what that might mean for Ukraine and that war, but also a really, really big focus today on illegal migration, a challenge that we are struggling to deal with, let's face it, and across the whole of Europe. Very little agreement on how to deal with this, but a real problem. Not very far off 400,000 people came illegally into the European Union last year. Now, Sir Keir Starmer would love to strike some sort of EU returns agreement. That is not going to happen, at least not in the immediate future, because Ursula von der Leyen, apart from anything else, isn't even here because she is fighting for re-selection. But it may be possible that there may be some side deals. He's meeting with Emmanuel Macron. There may be some sort of other agreement with France. Possibly we might agree to take some potential child asylum seekers in exchange for some people being sent back to France. We will have to see, but there's nothing easy about this because, of course, we want lots of things from Europe, but there's going to be a price attached to those, I should imagine.
OK, Catherine Forster down at Blenheim Palace, thank you very much. We'll be back with you throughout the show.
OK, political commentator James Mathewson joins us now. Good morning, James.
Good morning.
Good morning. So when you see these pictures of Sir Keir Starmer meeting all these EU leaders there in the stately home of Blenheim Palace, starting, as he says, a new relationship to reset the relationship with the EU, does your heart sing a little?
I mean, there's not much that makes my heart sing, especially not this early in the morning, Bev. But I do think it's a good thing. It's a great thing for the country. And it's great to see us on the world stage not being embarrassing, or should I say, not being embarrassing yet anyway. You know, we've got time. So I think it's great to see somebody who has a great relationship already with Europe. I imagine there's many people on the Brexit side of things who aren't thrilled about that, but Keir Starmer does have a very positive reputation in Europe, and he's built strong relationships in Europe, having been the shadow Brexit minister for the Labour Party as well.
So where does this lead to, James? Where do we end up? Are we going to be rejoining the single market, freedom of movement again in years to come under Sir Keir Starmer? Where would you like it to go?
No, he's ruled those elements out. So it's just about a closer relationship with Europe, because Brexit never needed to be about being isolationist. And that was the pitch by Brexiteers at the time, was about, we want our sovereign independence, we want to be able to get rid of these regulations, etc., etc. But it was never about destroying the relationship with Europe. The damage that's been done, and I believe mishandled by people like Boris Johnson, was done for their own political ideation. And I don't believe there's any benefit for the UK from it. So staying in the Brexit position, staying out of Europe, that debate's done. It's been hard. The referendum's well behind us. But being able to forge a positive relationship with our allies and with our closest neighbours, especially in a time of turmoil on the world stage, is a very positive thing.
But James, there's going to be viewers watching this who voted for Brexit, who feel like it was never really implemented by the previous Conservative government, who say, James, Sir Keir Starmer, Labour, we just don't believe you. We don't trust you.
Oh, it's great. I mean, the proof's in the pudding, isn't it? And that's always the case. And we've got to wait that out and see. I would say that I don't believe the Labour movement, the wider Labour movement, the trade union movement, everything that holds the party together, and that Keir Starmer has the responsibility to keep happy, would allow that to happen, because that was hugely divisive. And you look at the general election results in 2017 and 2019, even the most ardent people who wanted to remain, myself included, I campaigned for remain, wouldn't want to revisit that, because the referendum and the mandate was clear from that referendum result. So, you know, only an idiot would want to revisit that and dredge up those feelings of division in the country that it created. So I think it's important that they crack on with this, forging a positive relationship. And we see people like Zelensky there at Blenheim Palace. It's great to bring people together at this time of, you know, of like I say, chaos on the world stage and real confusion as well.
But come on, though, James, if Keir Starmer in the next, let's give him 3 years to settle in, and then he goes, look, the world was a different place when we had the last Brexit referendum. You know, as you say, we hear this lack of stability narrative all the time. I'm not entirely convinced by it myself, but we hear that the world is a more dangerous place. They keep telling us. Again, I'm not entirely convinced that it is. He might then turn around to Keir Starmer and say, "I'm really sorry to everybody in the country. We're going to have another vote on this. We're going to have another referendum on our relationship with the EU." But would you like to see that happen maybe in 3 years?
No, I don't want to revisit that, because people like myself who come from proud working class communities, in the northeast of England, across the place, we saw these divisions firsthand. I was knocking on doors for the referendum campaign, and the campaign was incredibly mishandled anyway, and I have my own opinions about that. But at the same time, people just weren't being listened to. It was a real dark chapter, I think, of our country's history, and the decision was made, and we should stick with it. But at the same time, that being said, I mean, I don't know why you're doubting the stability or the instability, I should say, that we're seeing in the world stage, because Finland joining NATO, you've got Sweden joining NATO.
I'm more worried about Ukraine joining NATO. I'm much more worried about Ukraine joining NATO. That would cause instability.
Well, you see Finland sharing a border with Russia. I mean, and they've been resistant to join NATO for so long because they know exactly what Putin's plan is. They've seen that instability. But it's not just there. Look at the powder keg that is the Middle East. And of course, it's always been in a state of turmoil in the Middle East. But, heightened tensions allow for more situations where there could be incidents that cause bigger conflicts. And with a Trump presidency pendant, I think it's a very, very dangerous time. So it's important that we stick together with our European allies.
I'd like your opinion on that, James, while we watch these pictures then of Zelensky meeting Sir Keir Starmer. Do you think a Trump presidency would be more problematic? Because evidentially there were no conflicts under Trump's premiership. That's what's so fascinating. He had a quotes unquote good relationship with Putin. Sometimes it takes a slightly unpredictable man to manage another slightly unpredictable man. I think I would feel a little safer with Trump in the White House.
Wow. Okay. Well, that certainly is a take, Bev. I disagree with it. However,
Go on, but based on what, though? Like, genuinely, based on what?
Based on the fact that the man is a maniac, and I don't
Which
believe
one?
he can be trusted. He's not sensible. The man's a sex offender as well. I mean, this is not a man. Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a sex offender. Donald Trump is a dangerous man who uses rhetoric. Donald Trump is a sex offender. He's been found to be a sex offender through the courts.
Not in a criminal court. James, just forget the conjecture around Trump and your opinions that you don't like him. But look at his record whilst in office. There were no wars under his presidency. He was the first leader to meet a North Korean leader in the demilitarized zone. There was peace in the Middle East.
I don't believe that. I mean, that's a question of time.
What do you mean you don't believe it? I mean, were there any wars under him? Yes or no? The answer is no.
He's not leading the world. He's leading a country in the world, OK?
James, were there any wars under Donald Trump in his 4 years in the White House? Yes or no?
Yes, there was conflicts across the Middle East. Of course, we had Afghanistan still. We had conflicts all over the place. It didn't just stop.
Not that he started.
We had Yemen. Yemen under Trump.
In terms of invasions orchestrated by America, we did not have any under Trump. It was a time of relative calm during that 4 years, definitely compared to the Obama and the Clinton and the Bush administrations. There's no doubt about it. And listen, I can draw a distinction between Donald Trump, the man, who I think is far from blameless, and what he represents when he stands on the global stage and how he interacts with other global leaders. If he does get to the White House, I feel we might all be able to actually relax. I think people presumed he'd be trigger happy, and he wasn't trigger happy.
I think the only reason we would think that is because he would submit to Putin. And he would give it. I mean, look at the comments of J.D. Vance, his vice president. He says he doesn't care about Ukraine. Is that really? I mean, Winston Churchill, you have to remember, said that you cannot reason with a tiger when your head is in its mouth. And that's what we're looking at here. I mean, you can't reason with Putin. You can't reason with a man who wants to invade another sovereign country and take the territory. Now, if Trump's solution to that is let him have it, then where does that stop? That's exactly what the apologists for Adolf Hitler said at the time when he took Czechoslovakia.
All right, James, great to talk to you. Come back again. I really enjoyed that. James Matthewson there, political commentator. I think the analysis of what's happening in Russia and Ukraine is much more complicated than that. It's much more nuanced.
And just talking about the EU as well, so James, fairly certain there that, we're not going to be opening the doors to freedom of movement in 5 years or back in the single market and whatever else. But, I mean, there's plenty of those on the left who do Dominic Grieve, who is, what's his role now? Vice President of the European Movement of the UK, former Attorney General. He wants to rejoin the EU. People like Alistair Campbell. Carol Vorderman, I suspect, is on that bandwagon as well.
Luckily, she's not an MP yet.
No, but
she's not in the House of Lords yet.
But there's a growing campaign.
There is. No, you're absolutely right. I just find it amazing when people talk about Carol Vorderman as being significantly political, because, ironically, she sort of is. You're not wrong, Ben. But listen, up next, we're going to be talking about a drug that can turn your granny into a supermodel, but it might also be able to save your life with Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Don't miss it.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
Now, the last time we spoke, we always talk about the topic of gender and your transition. So talk to me about now, though. What you've done is you've created a comic book about your life and about your transition to tell us things that perhaps the press and media don't talk about.
Yes, so throughout the years I have always been persuaded to write a book, but I was never ready to disclose so much. And I've been working this beautiful comic book. I brought you a little copy. It's here. You can have a look into it later, where I'm detailing past experiences, growing up in Brazil and then moving to this country, and my struggles, the struggles that I had to go through to become the woman that I'm today. I'm a woman. I'm not a biological woman, but I am a woman. I just cannot have babies because I don't have the female organs, but I'm a woman inside out, therefore I use the female toilet. But what has been going on around, there are a lot of people, they regard themselves as being transgender when they're actually not. They don't have any psychological help, they don't have any medical help. They just wear female clothes and makeup and they call themselves female. And they're the ones using female spaces and take advantage of that. And that is what should stop and be controlled.
But that's the problem, isn't it? So what do you do to stop that? I mean, the suggestion was a third extra space. How would you feel about a third extra space where, you know, this is where if somebody is trans or any of those other things can use rather than using the female toilet?
I don't think that would work, actually, because these people that regard those people that regard themselves as being females in their minds, they still would use the female toilet.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
She could have said Stum.
You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. It's 10:25. Ben and Bev with you on Britain's Newsroom, only on GB News this morning.
We have got in the studio broadcaster Carol Malone and political commentator Jonathan Liss. When you came in, they did say to us, we've got some work experienced people in the building today. And then you two walked in. I thought, that can't be right. I know these two.
Well, I'm glad I could be thought of as young enough for work experience.
Well, likewise, to be honest.
We're well past that, aren't we? Right, we had the King's speech yesterday. And obviously a lot in there, 35 bills, Carol, to digest. But what was your major takeout of what Britain is going to look like under Sir Keir Starmer?
My take on the whole thing was terror. I mean, literally terror, because, you know, this is, I think Stephen Glover talked about it today as the dead hand of the state, or something like that. He said something like that. You know, and he's right. This is, it terrified me. I think it's terrifying for the private sector. I think it's terrifying for small businesses. You know, he said he was going to... it was going to be growth and he was going to take the brakes off Britain. He's put the brakes on. You know, every
anti-strike law from 2010 has been chucked out, which means this country, and the unions will be given much more powers, which means this country can be brought to a standstill. Everything, all emergency services, whenever the unions feel like it. He's talking about, he was talking about inheriting a country that is in a terrible state. No, it isn't. Our economy is really good at the moment. The IMF is saying we're going to do better next year than France or Germany or Italy. And that's not good. But, of course, Labour will claim credit for that. But, what scared me was that they're going to run the railways, they're going to run... This is ministers, they're going to run power plants. I mean, they're going to run energy sites.
They're going to control football.
Yeah, we've got new bodies, a football
That was a Tory bill that was originally coming
through. The thing
through.
is, that's not going to wreck the country, them controlling football. However, them running an energy plant might just
bring us to our knees.
And I just think, it's clear we're going to all have to pay, many more taxes to pay for this bloated state we're going to have. And I think the Federation of Small Businesses came out yesterday and just said, this is really scary because the laws they put in place, because when you look at them, it looks like the laws are going to protect workers, no more 0 hours contracts, all of that. However, what that does to a small company, it says, I can't afford to employ the people I need to do the job. I may have to get rid of people. So it's a kind of counterproductive move.
It's the return of big government, is it not, Jonathan?
No, it's the return of stable government.
Don't say grown-ups in the room.
No, I'm not going to. I wasn't going to say grown-ups in the room.
Please don't repeat that.
It's a return of social democratic government, which is exactly what the people have just voted for. I mean, I don't know.
20% of the population voted for it. Stop the people voted for.
Carol, I didn't interrupt you, and my God, I wanted to many times. When you say terror,
doesn't mean I can't interrupt you.
Carol, when you say terror, come on, let's be serious. There are things that you can disagree with. There is nothing to be literally terrified about.
Yeah.
You didn't vote Labour, that's fine. More people voted Labour than voted Conservative, and that's why we have a Labour majority today. If you want to talk about, which I don't think we should talk about right this minute, about changing the voting system so we can have a more proportional system which would vastly reduce the number of Labour MPs and increase the number of Tory MPs, then actually I'm very happy to have that conversation because I've been supporting it for a long time, but that's not the system we have. And with the system that we have, Labour spread its vote very, very efficiently, and it has a huge landslide, and as a result, it has a mandate.
Talk about this.
I'm just coming on to it because you're talking about terror. I'm saying the people have voted for this. Now, there is a lot in this King's speech that we can be really happy about. And everything in this King's speech was foregrounded in the election campaign. There are no surprises.
Well, that in itself is a bit disappointing, isn't it? That there was so much of it in there, as you pointed out when Carol was talking, were actually Tory ideas anyway, the vaping, the smoking... Which
actually I completely disagree with. That was the one thing I thought was completely nonsensical, to have Rishi Sunak's hobby horse, which was to stop people born in 2009 from ever being able to buy cigarettes, which will lead to a completely preposterous situation in 30 years' time where 45-year-olds are having to get their 46-year-old mates to buy them fags.
Okay, so
that's completely stupid.
The big things, come on, the big things like housing.
Yeah.
They can build housing estates all over the country. Locals don't get a say in it at all. They can do whatever they want, and they're still not admitting that they're going to have to build more houses because of the huge numbers of immigrants that are arriving.
Carol, look, everyone knows that we have a housing crisis, and there'd be a housing crisis even with zero migration. So obviously we need to completely change the way that planning is done in this country. So it's not to say that local people shouldn't have any say at all.
Well,
it's just to say that if you have a kind of a culture of NIMBYism around the entire country. No one wants major developments in their backyard. No one wants their view spoiled if you live in the countryside by pylons or whatever. And we're seeing that play out in Suffolk with the new Green MP, which a lot of people are talking about right now. Obviously, it's the Greens' agenda to roll out sort of a green infrastructure, but obviously when it comes to one's own constituency, you have to kind of listen to the people who voted for you as well. So that's a kind of a difficulty. But fundamentally, we either want new housing or we don't. We either want new green development or not.
We need so many new houses because the ONS have made really clear, they've said that there was virtually no population growth in 22-23, but the population has gone up by 610,000, and that is down to immigration. So we're going to use our green belt to build houses for people, many of whom have come here illegally, and many of whom are
the vast majority of people don't come here illegally, Carol.
A lot of them do come illegally. So we're going to build houses for people.
They're not the ones being housed on Greenland. Come on, people who are coming. Asylum seekers. The reason that asylum seekers are being housed in such large numbers, by the way, is that the last government sort of basically had a moratorium or a ban on processing their claims. So actually, people are just like stuck in the system. So that's a separate issue. But obviously, there are people who are coming. Well, they did have a border, the border. Well, they were talking about the new border security.
That was already in existence.
Starmer's talking about a new border security command. Look, Carol, we've discussed this many times, and you'll know that I'm not a Labour immigration spokesman, and I would do things differently. We're here to talk about the King's Speech and what was in there. I think it was a positive social democratic platform. Should it be the sum total of Labour ambition? Of course not. But it's a good start. And
you like the idea of a bloated state. You like the idea that there's no anti-strike laws anymore, which means that services in this country can be brought to a standstill.
Carol, and also I have to take issue with what you were saying about emergency services, because the emergency services there's always been a policy in the doctor strikes that we've had that emergency care will not be affected. No, people are not. Why do you think people go into this profession? They know that they want to save lives above all else.
Are you kidding me? And you're talking about doctors, and you're talking about doctors on strike, actually leaving sick people to go on strike for more money, and you're telling me that they go into it, it's a vocation. No.
Of course it's a vocation. They shouldn't be working for... They're not going to be working for free, are they?
And then they work for six-figure salaries, many of the doctors. I'm sorry, but...
Well, they're allowed to be paid for what they do.
We've been beaten by the clock. We didn't even get onto the Renters' Rights Bill, which is going to make life very difficult if you are a landlord and you've got a tricky tenant you want to get rid of. That just became a lot more difficult. All right, Jonathan and Carol will be back in the next hour.
Time now for your news headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good morning to you. It's just after 10:30, and the top story this morning, well, widespread failures to properly prepare for a pandemic in the UK are expected to be laid bare later. The COVID inquiry is releasing the first of at least 8 reports into the crisis this lunchtime. Evidence heard so far at the inquiry suggests the UK's response was affected by public health cutbacks. Sir Keir Starmer is hosting around 45 leaders from across Europe today at a summit that he hopes will fire the starting gun on a new relationship with the EU. The Prime Minister says he wants to use the event to push for joint action on illegal migration. Support for Ukraine, security and energy are also expected to be on the agenda. Joe Biden has been forced to pull out of a campaign speech after contracting coronavirus. The White House says the 81-year-old is having mild symptoms from the infection, but is vaccinated, boosted and isolating while continuing his duties. It comes as the US president's facing growing pressure to step aside because of his age. And there are also reports today that the 2 top Democrats in Congress have met privately with Joe Biden to express concerns over his re-election bid. 2 prominent MPs, both former government ministers overseeing the Post Office, are being questioned at the Horizon IT inquiry. Labour's Pat McFadden is currently being questioned at that inquiry in central London, while Sir Ed Davey, now the leader of the Liberal Democrats, will be speaking later. He also held that role during his time in the position. They will be asked about errors in the Horizon IT system, which led to sub-postmasters being wrongly convicted of fraud. Wages have grown by 5.7% in the 3 months to May, a drop from 6% growth in the first 3 months of the year. Meanwhile, unemployment remained unchanged, with official figures showing the jobless rate is now 4.5%. The families of 2 British men reported missing in Sweden are appealing for information on their whereabouts. It's feared the men were victims of a double murder. It comes after a pair of bodies were found in a burning car in an industrial area of Malmo on Sunday. Those bodies are yet to be formally identified. And scientists say an experimental drug that extends the lifespan of mice by 25% could also work in humans. The treatment, an injection of an antibody that was given to the animals when they were middle-aged, reduced deaths from cancer. Those are the latest GB News headlines. For now, I'm Sam Francis. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here's a quick look at the markets for you this morning. The pound will buy you $1.2983 and €1.1878. The price of gold this hour, £1,899.08 per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 8,249 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. It's going to be a warmer day than yesterday today, dry for much of England and Wales. However, it is much cloudier the further north and west you go. That's because weather fronts are really going to linger over here for the next few days across parts of Northern Ireland and western areas of Scotland in particular. Eastern Scotland should remain largely dry, and for the bulk of England and Wales it's going to be a dry and sunny day, the sunshine lasting well into the afternoon. It's going to be quite strong sunshine and it will feel fairly hot in the sunshine. In fact, particularly across the southeast where temperatures could climb to 28 degrees this afternoon, but widely will be close to those mid-20s, so warmer than it has been lately for sure. The rain's going to last across western areas and northern areas of Scotland well into this evening as well. It's a little bit fresher the further north and west you go as well, but it is feeling fairly humid even underneath this cloud. Some showers could push into parts of the Lake District, into northwestern areas of England. We could see some rain across the far west of Wales, some cloud pushing into the far west of Cornwall as well later on this evening, so some hazy sunshine to end the day. But further south and east for much of central and southern areas of England, as well as some eastern areas of Wales, it will remain largely dry and clear overnight. It's going to be a mild night tonight. It could be a little bit uncomfortable for sleeping. Temperatures could come close to 20 degrees overnight tonight, so widely in those high teens where we are close to that more humid air. Now, the bulk of the rain is more restricted further north and west through Friday, so that will allow a bit more in the way of brightness to develop for much of Northern Ireland and Scotland. So temperatures will rise a little bit more, particularly across southeastern areas of Scotland on Friday, but it's the peak of the heat to come on Friday. Temperatures exceeding 30 degrees, potentially across the south and east, widely in those high 20s as well. Bye-bye.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Cheshire, the A533 is closed each way along Runcorn Road at Little Lee after an accident. On the M6 in Cheshire, there's a lane closed northbound after an accident between junctions 18 and 19 from the Middlewich and Holmes Chapel turn to Knutsford, causing queues. On the M6 in Warwickshire, there's a lane closed northbound from junction 3 at Coventry to 4 for the M42 after an accident with queues towards there. In Cambridgeshire, on the A14, there's a lane closed westbound just after junction 34 near Cambridge after a vehicle caught fire, with queues from junction 36 for the A11 near Newmarket. The M1 in Hertfordshire is blocked each way for an investigation between junctions 10 and 9 between Luton Airport and Redbourne. There are queues each way from junction 8 at Hemel Hempstead and from 11 at Dunstable. And the A1M in Hertfordshire is closed southbound from junction 7 south of Stevenage to 6 at Welling after an accident, with queues from junction 9 at Letchworth. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Very good morning to you. Welcome back. It's coming fast towards 20 to 11 here on GB News. Ben and Bev with you on Britain's Newsroom.
So Donald Trump's newly nominated running mate, J.D. Vance, took centre stage at the Republican convention in Milwaukee last night.
Yes, and he vowed to, quote, serve America with everything he has as he ushered in a new era of politics.
So this all comes as members of the crowd showed support for Donald Trump by wearing bandages on their ears following Saturday's assassination attempt.
Well, our man on the ground, Ray Addison, was there at the rally overnight and he sent this report.
So Donald Trump set to close off this conference with a speech at 8 o'clock Central Time. That's around 2 a.m. on Friday morning in the United Kingdom. And America is going to be very keenly looking to see what kind of tone he takes following that assassination attempt in Pennsylvania. Of course, he said afterwards that it had forced him to rip up the speech that he'd written for this evening and start again. We saw that he posted on Truth Social those those two words, unite America. And Joe Biden as well, the president, of course, saying that it was time to cool down the rhetoric. But since then, we saw that he took part in that interview with NBC where he doubled down on those tropes that we've been hearing for so long now, that Trump is an existential threat to democracy. And those are the types of comments that some believe could have spurred on Crooks, the would-be assassin. So how will Trump respond to that tonight? Now, will he go back on the attack, or will he continue to take that more statesman-like approach, that more presidential approach that many people here would like to see? Now, we're sure to hear Trump's take on exactly what happened in Pennsylvania, how it felt in that moment to be shot, and the impact that it's had on him. Plus, of course, it could not be a Trump speech without his details of his plans to prevent illegal immigration, to fix the US economy, and of course his promise, his pledge to solve the war in Ukraine before he's even entered office, should he be elected. However, with Donald Trump, there is always, as you know, a few surprises. Now, right now, we know that the Republican Party very much has the momentum in this general election. Today we saw Joe Biden withdrawing from that conference in Las Vegas, citing COVID, and that's caused some continuing concerns about his health and his ability to continue not only in this campaign but as president of these United States. And that has not done much to dispel the concerns about his health. That was a real miss for Joe Biden. He missed the chance to take some of the focus off of the Republican campaign. And of course, it comes at the same time as more and more prominent Democrats are calling for him to withdraw. For the moment, Democrats look to be stuck with Joe Biden, with him refusing to withdraw, and Republicans here at the conference very much feeling that Trump is the president in waiting.
All right, that was our reporter on the ground, Ray Addison, in Milwaukee at the Republican National Convention overnight.
Well, Paul Connew is former editor of the Sunday Mirror. Good morning, Paul. Great to see you. Great to see you. We're right in saying, aren't we, that you are friends with Donald Trump might be a little stretched, but you certainly have encountered him on numerous occasions.
Hardly friends. I've often broadcast and written that I thought he was unfit to be president. I knew him quite well back in the days when he was a controversial, flamboyant New York businessman, not a politician. And in those days, he used to court the mainstream media rather than accuse us of being deep state enemies out to destroy him. So, but I'm currently resigned to the fact that Donald Trump is almost certain to become president for the second time, which personally I fear we could see American democracy lurching towards American autocracy during a second Trump term. But let's see what happens. I mean, tonight his speech will be more like a religious, a fervent religious event rather than a straightforward political rally. I mean, it got close to that when J.D. Vance made his speech last night.
I know, Paul. God forbid any politician being popular and people appreciating him for his efforts. You talked about how you fear another Trump term because he'd be I don't think you said these words precisely, but a dictator and an autocracy. I mean, there were
he used the word dictator himself, at one stage. Although I think we might see, post the assassination bid, we might see quite a clever move by Trump in which he will be the conciliator. And it's quite interesting, the J.D. Vance pick, because it gives the opportunity for Trump to play the unifying, a slightly more moderate Trump than he has been, with J.D. Vance doing, if you like, the heavy lifting at the...
Paul, can I just interject and ask? Sorry to interrupt you. You talk about your fears for dictator Trump, and many other people do, but we didn't see that in the first term he had. So what's changed?
Well, we saw us, not a dictator, but we saw some pretty extreme behaviour and language from Trump, and what we've actually had since then... But what we've had since then, is the legal battles, etc., You know, I just think, you know, Trump is going to be the president unless something dramatic happens. I mean, interesting, there was a poll 2 days ago that showed that the one Democrat at the moment who could beat Trump is Michelle Obama. But of course, she actually insists she's not going to stand. But I suspect and hope that the Democrats will find some way of replacing Joe Biden, who clearly isn't fit to actually be a candidate.
We're just running out of time, unfortunately, but can you just very briefly, in 10 seconds, give an example off the top of your head how he was extreme? Because some would argue, I mean, even his worst critics would argue, he didn't really have a chance to get much done. He didn't build much of the wall that he promised to build, for example. Can you give an example of how he was extreme in his policy?
Well, I think the great example was his behaviour when he lost an election that he denied losing, and probably it'd be interesting to see tonight whether he repeats the "I was robbed" last time. Certainly, J.D. Vance has contributed, a view that Trump was robbed and the election was stolen from him. So I'm fascinated to see which Donald Trump emerges tonight. Will it be the new hinted conciliator, or will it be the old Donald Trump? And I think that's going to be the most interesting thing about tonight.
OK, all right, thank you, Paul. Appreciate your opinion. Former editor of the Sunday Mirror. Right, up next.
We're discussing mindfulness.
Mindfulness.
Not quite in sync there, were we? In the old
do we need to encourage children to be mindful? Why do we need to encourage children to be mindful? What's gone wrong? This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Go and get another glass of that bubbly, you've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
No one wants their child to be a fussy eater. But what is the secret to expanding your child's culinary horizons?
Is there a way to get kids away from the kids' menu, the fish fingers, the chips? Joining us now is the UK's top-selling author of children's cookery books, Annabelle Carmel. Good morning, Annabelle.
Thank you. So lovely to be here.
So, first of all, what's the issue with kids just having the traditional easy meals like fish fingers, chips, beans?
It really depends if they've got preservatives in them, if they're full of salt. So I like to make them myself, and it's really easy. So I make my own chicken glazed nuggets, and super easy to make using proper pieces of chicken. You can cook them in the air fryer now, which is absolutely brilliant, so you need to fry them. And I think that it's really important that children grow up loving good food, because they make their minds up by the age of 5 what they like and what they don't like, and it's quite difficult to change their minds after that. But it's good to know that fussy eating is genetic. It's not to do with your cooking.
Oh,
that's right? Not to say that you can't do something about it. So I've written many, many books, and I have an app with 1,000 recipes on it, and a lot of how to make your own junk food, how to make your own isolinis out of fresh fruit.
Yes.
How to make your own pizzas. I make the most amazing homemade pizza. I actually brought you some cookies here.
These are your books here. So my first cookbook, that's for how old children?
That's from the age of 1.
OK, and you've got a weaning one at the end, the baby one?
Yes, that's my very first book. I lost my first child. It was really sad. She died at the age of 3 months. And my second child was the world's worst eater. And I wrote that book as my legacy to Natasha, never thinking that it would start a whole career.
Oh, bless you.
It sold millions of copies, and it's still popular.
Is it quite pivotal and important that you introduce kids to the weaning stage, or, how important?
It's very important, because the processed weaning food in pouches or jars, it's heated, so a lot of the vitamins aren't there anymore, so making your own is so easy and much cheaper.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Yeah, it was 10:50. Ben and Bev with you. Now, at the start of the year, we spoke to Esther Guy, the mother of teenager Brianna, who was brutally murdered by two 15-year-olds she thought were her friends.
So now, Mother Esther is campaigning for all teachers to be trained in the mental technique of well-being mindfulness. She says that it literally saved her life. Our reporter, Eleanor Smith, has more.
She was really outgoing and she wanted to be TikTok famous. She was just a child whose life was taken far too soon.
Teenager Brianna Jai was murdered in February last year, stabbed 28 times with a hunting knife by two 15-year-olds she thought were her friends. That's when her mum Esther's world changed forever. But she says practicing mindfulness saved her life. It's similar to meditation and involves focusing your attention on the present moment to become more aware of your thoughts to help better control them.
I'd managed to build that level of mental resilience and I think that empathy towards myself as well, so that when I was experiencing grief, I was kind to myself, I was compassionate, I was understanding, and I let myself have these feelings. But then I didn't get caught in the habit of what I could have done. And don't get me wrong, they did come to my mind, but I managed to acknowledge that they were there and choose a different path. I would 100% say that mindfulness has saved my life.
All teachers in Warrington, Brianna's hometown, are now trained in mindfulness techniques. But Esther and the Mindfulness in Schools project say they won't stop there. They're campaigning to see the initiative rolled out across the country to help tackle the mental health crisis in teenagers.
I've been working in education since 1996. Things have got more difficult. I would go into with a class and then I say, who feels like they're stressed? And nearly everyone would have their hands up. And this would be like 8, 9-year-olds.
Mindfulness can equip children and young people with practical tools and to calm down in tricky situations.
While some studies have questioned the effectiveness of mindfulness on mental health, Esther believes if it was around when Brianna was younger, it might have prevented her death.
Back at the end of January.
And while it's too late for Brianna, Esther says she won't stop campaigning to make the world a safer and more understanding place for young people.
I think that if Brianna have experienced mindfulness in, say, primary school earlier on in life, I think that it could have possibly prevented the onset of the more serious mental health issues that she had. So many really brutal crimes that are happening, and it's happening at the hands of young people. So we really need to develop empathy at a young age to prevent these crimes from happening in the first place.
Eleanor Smith, GB News.
I think she's amazing, actually, as a woman, how she's made this positive. But you and I have quite strong opinions on mindfulness, don't we? We're going to tell you in a little while. I think we shouldn't need it, and you're a big fan of it, aren't you? But anyway, we're going to talk about that in just a moment, so you're going to have to stay tuned. But still to come. A football regulator was confirmed in the King's speech yesterday to, quote, ensure greater sustainability in the sport. What on earth does that mean? Maybe they're going to, wildflower the pitches. Maybe. Don't know. We'll find out in a minute. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Here's Annie with the weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. It's going to be a warmer day than yesterday today, dry for much of England and Wales. However, it is much cloudier the further north and west you go. That's because weather fronts are really going to linger over here for the next few days across parts of Northern Ireland and western areas of Scotland in particular. Eastern Scotland should remain largely dry, and for the bulk of England and Wales it's going to be a dry and sunny day, the sunshine lasting well into the afternoon. It's going to be quite strong sunshine and it will feel fairly hot in the sunshine. In fact, particularly across the southeast where temperatures could climb to 28 degrees this afternoon, but widely will be close to those mid-20s, so warmer than it has been lately for sure. The rain's going to last across western areas and northern areas of Scotland well into this evening as well. It's a little bit fresher the further north and west you go as well, but it is feeling fairly humid even underneath this cloud. Some showers could push into parts of the Lake District, into northwestern areas of England. We could see some rain across the far west of Wales, some cloud pushing into the far west of Cornwall as well later on this evening, so some hazy sunshine to end the day. But further south and east for much of central and southern areas of England, as well as the eastern areas of Wales, it will remain largely dry and clear overnight. It's going to be a mild night tonight. It could be a little bit uncomfortable for sleeping. Temperatures could come close to 20 degrees overnight tonight, so widely in those high teens where we are close to that more humid air. Now, the bulk of the rain is more restricted further north and west through Friday, so that will allow a bit more in the way of brightness to develop for much of Northern Ireland and Scotland. So temperatures will rise a little bit more, particularly across southeastern areas of Scotland on Friday, but it's the peak of the heat to come on Friday. Temperatures exceeding 30 degrees, potentially across the south and east, widely in those high 20s as well. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
£30,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours. It's our biggest cash prize of the year so far, and you could be getting that winning call from us to tell you that you're our next Great British Giveaway winner.
Oh, I can't believe this.
Oh my God, this is amazing.
That is absolutely fantastic.
We're over the moon.
I've never won anything like this in my life.
Oh, you shocked me. I never won a penny in my life.
If I was there, I'd buy you a drink.
For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Isabel Webster. Thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
11 a.m. on Thursday, the 18th of July, live across the United Kingdom. This is Britain's Newsroom with me, Bev Turner, and Ben Leo in for Andrew Pearce.
Very good morning to you. Hope you're doing well. Now, Britain seeks a new migrant deal with the EU as the Prime Minister hosts EU leaders at Blenheim Palace today. He's currently sat next to Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky. We'll bring you a snippet of his speech in just a moment.
Labour's Pat McFadden is giving evidence at the Post Office inquiry. Soon we're going to hear from the Lib Dem leader, Sir Ed Davey, over his role in the IT Horizon scandal.
And COVID failures. The first reports published from the COVID inquiry is expected to be highly critical of the Conservative government's handling of the pandemic. We could have told you that.
And President Joe Biden has pulled out of a campaign speech after testing positive for COVID. So what will happen next? Keep your views coming this morning. GBNews.com/you're safe. First are the very latest news headlines with Sam Francis.
Bev, thank you very much and good morning to you. It's just coming up to 2 minutes past 11 and we'll start with news that Volodymyr Zelensky has arrived at that meeting of around 45 European leaders in Oxfordshire, where more support is being promised for Ukraine. And earlier, the Ukrainian president said as he arrived that he is counting on Sir Keir Starmer's support.
The UK demonstrated leadership from the very beginning of Russian attacks and all the strong steps and some not simple steps always UK began. So I count on my meeting. I will have meeting with Prime Minister and also bilateral one, and also I will have meeting with the government.
Sir Keir Starmer is hosting that summit at Blenheim Palace, which he has said he hopes will fire the starting gun on a new relationship with the EU following Brexit. These are the live pictures inside that summit as Sir Keir Starmer is currently giving his opening statement. As Ben and Bev mentioned, we will bring you a quick snippet of that opening statement shortly. The Prime Minister says he wants to reset the relationship with the continent and push for closer security ties with other countries. The group have already agreed on boosting defence capabilities in Ukraine as it defends itself against Russia. The COVID inquiry will release its first report this lunchtime, which is expected to expose widespread failures to prepare for a pandemic. It will also make recommendations on how the UK might better prepare for a future outbreak. Evidence heard in the inquiry so far suggests the government's response was affected by public health cutbacks. At least 8 more reports will follow today's publication. In the US, Joe Biden has tested positive for coronavirus. The president was last seen walking off of Air Force One after cancelling a campaign speech in Las Vegas. His diagnosis comes as concerns are growing about his age, with some top Democrats reportedly questioning his re-election bid after privately meeting with him. This morning, an interview's been released with Biden suggesting he would pull out of the race for the White House if medical professionals advised him to.
I made a serious mistake in the whole debate. And look, when I originally ran, you may remember it, I said I was going to be a transitional candidate. And I thought that I'd be able to move from this, just pass it on to someone else. But I didn't anticipate things getting so divided. And quite frankly, I think the only thing age brings a little bit of wisdom. And I think I've demonstrated that I know how to get things done for the country.
And staying with news from the US, J.D. Vance has described Donald Trump as America's last best hope during his first speech as the Republican vice presidential candidate. Speaking at the party's national convention in Wisconsin, he praised the former president for his defiance after he became a target of an assassination attempt over the weekend. Vance was chosen as Trump's running mate despite being his critic in the run-up to the 2016 election. Here, the families of 2 British men who have been reported missing in Sweden are now appealing for information on their whereabouts. It's feared the men were victims of a double murder. 33-year-old Juan Cifuentes and Farouk Abdul Razak, who's 37, travelled for a business trip but haven't come home. Officers are now investigating after 2 bodies were found in a burnt-out car in the area on Sunday. Local media in Malmö are reporting that they were shot, though police are still working to identify the victims. 1 person has died and 71 people have been rescued after a migrant boat sank in the English Channel late last night. All those on board the vessel ended up in the water but were picked up in a joint rescue operation between the UK and French authorities. Two prominent MPs, both of whom were former government ministers who oversaw the Post Office, are being questioned this morning at the Horizon IT inquiry. Currently, Labour's Pat McFadden is in the chair answering questions. He was Postal Affairs Minister. And Sir Ed Davey, now the leader of the Liberal Democrats, is also expected to give evidence later after he held that role. They'll be asked about the errors in the Horizon IT system, which led to sub-postmasters being wrongly convicted of fraud. And another inquiry examining claims that women and girls were mistreated in police custody is due to be published this lunchtime. Dame Vera Baird is reviewing allegations linked to Greater Manchester Police and how they dealt with people following arrest, including some men. Greater Manchester Police accepts there are examples of poor standards and practices, but they say they have fully engaged with the inquiry. Wages have grown by 5.7% in the 3 months to May. That's a drop, though, from the 6% growth in the first 3 months of the year. Meanwhile, unemployment remained unchanged, with official figures showing the jobless rate is now 4.5%. A heat health alert has been issued for parts of England for Friday, with temperatures set to hit 30 degrees Celsius. The UK Health Security Agency's alert covers East Midlands, East England, London and the South East from tomorrow through to Saturday. It's warning that hot weather may impact the health and social care sector. An experimental drug has been found to extend the lifespan of mice by 25%, with researchers saying it could also work in humans. They say that the trials with the animals injected with the antibody called IL-11 cut cancer deaths, reduced chronic inflammation and saw less muscle wasting, all key signs of ageing. And finally, viewers have been tuning in to get a rare peek inside the hidden world of a snake megaden in northern Colorado. But be warned, it could leave you rattled. The 2,000 rattlesnakes can now be viewed online live thanks to a round-the-clock webcam. Although, as you can see there, they're rather tricky to spot. I can just about make them out in the centre of the screen, hiding between the rocks. The elusive reptiles are nestling in the mountainside crevices, but the exact location's being kept secret to stop snake lovers or perhaps haters from messing with the animals. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sam Francis. Much more still to come in the next hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Morning, welcome back to Britain's Newsroom, live across the United Kingdom on GB News with me, Bev Turner, and Ben Leo here for Andrew Pearce.
Very good morning to you. Let's cross live to Blenheim Palace now, where Sir Keir Starmer is addressing European leaders alongside Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine.
To address all their issues without this one individual. Second, the reality on the battlefield is more convincing than any abstract deliberations. We have stopped the Russian advance on Kharkiv, period. Putin has sacrificed tens of thousands of his citizens, but has achieved nothing significant. This was made possible by the bravery of our warriors and the bravery of our partners, who have lifted limitations on the use of Western weapons along our border. Did this lead to escalation? No. On the contrary, it blocked Putin's attempt to expand the war. Did Putin have any response? No. Even when the Russian missile strikes children with cancer, as happened recently, it only repeats the evil we have already seen from Russia in this war. So we must act as brave as necessary to achieve results. We can steer this war towards its just ending with the power of our weapons and our diplomacy, and we should not fear these capabilities. The more effective our air defense is, the more helpless Putin will be. The fewer restrictions we have on the use of effective weapons, the more Russia will seek peace. Military airfields from which Russian jets take off with bombs against our cities, our people, our children, and the launch sites of Russian missiles, all these must be destroyed. This will not only eliminate some targets, but will also reduce Russia's capability to continue this war. The missiles...
OK, that was Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, speaking now live at Blenheim Palace alongside Sir Keir Starmer and other world leaders. On gbnews.com/you'll say, Ian, you're watching this as he speaks. You say, may I remind everyone that Ukraine is not in the EU. Also, they're not members of NATO, which is what the war in Ukraine is all about. Ian, some would argue that, I mean, the argument from the very, very pro-Ukraine side to keep funding them with endless amounts of taxpayer money is that if Putin takes Ukraine, Poland is next, or another country is next, and that would be a problem. They are NATO countries.
Let's go to Deputy Leader of Rejoin the EU, Richard Morley. Good morning, Richard. So, as the leader of Rejoin the EU, are you rejoicing this morning at these pictures of Sir Keir Starmer glad-handing all the EU leaders there and perhaps making deals that we will know about soon?
Well, I think it's very important that Britain and Europe come together and integrate their efforts towards solving the many problems that are facing not only Europe, but actually facing the world. The Ukrainian war, the immigration crisis, the global warming crisis, and indeed the struggle in Gaza are all major issues that have to be coordinated on a global basis. And we must remember this conference is not just about EU countries. In fact, some of the countries attending aren't even in Europe. And consequently, we have to coordinate with all these countries in order to get a better response to the crises that lay ahead.
I mean, we've always had global issues, Richard, throughout, all modern history. There have been issues which countries can work together. We had a Brexit referendum in which the British people voted to be outside of that particular club. Do you feel the mood of the nation is still, if we had a referendum tomorrow, would still vote in that direction?
No, absolutely no way. I think that the public in Britain have woken up to the reality that on our own, as a sort of separate sovereign nation, we are far less able to cope with the terrible problems that are around us. Now, you talk about history and all the crises in the past, but the crisis that faces us at the moment, global warming, is something that mankind has never faced. Moreover, the immigration problem, which is actually quite small at the present moment, when we take into account the effect of global warming over the next 20 years, the mass migration issue is really stupendous, and the whole world has got to coordinate together to cope with this. And war, at this moment, is not helping it. We must find a solution to war without endlessly protracting it into a struggle which could go on for years unless we diplomatically solve the issues that caused it.
So, Richard, the obvious question is, why can countries like Switzerland handle these topics and challenges without being in the EU, but we can't? I mean, are we not good enough? Do you not believe in Britain? What's the problem?
Well, being a member of the EU helps us to coordinate better. I mean, Switzerland, of course, is a wonderful country. But let's face it, Britain is still a major economy in the world. Its voice is still of great significance across the planet. And Britain should be making a stance not for separation of nations, but for unity. For unity not only in Europe, but unity across the world. This is what we need at the moment of grave global crisis, and I think this conference is one of the measures in which we will make a step towards that.
OK, thank you, Richard, for your strong opinions there. Deputy Leader of Rejoin the EU, Richard Morley. And no doubt, gbnews.com/you'll say is about to blow up.
It was the biggest democratic vote in this country's history. Why on earth anyone would want to repeat the toxicity of that period from 2016, I do not know. And by the way, there's no evidence that there's now over. You got some polls saying, oh, yeah, I'd like to read you. There's no evidence, so let's...
Crisis. The world is on fire. We have to be part of the EU. Migrants everywhere. We have to be part of the EU. First of all, you've got to believe that these crises are actually real, and to the extent that they are the emergency which we are perpetually being told that they are. And I, for one, am not convinced, actually, about a lot of the stuff that we're told about those particular issues. Let me have a look what you've been saying at home.
Yeah, look, I mean, in terms of global warming, you know, no one denies global warming exists, but I always say to people like Richard, I wish I'd asked him then, you know, we've had doomsday predictions from yesteryear, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, for example, in the year, I think it was 1996, the UN's chief climate scientist said that Britain would be under a Siberian climate by the year 2000. I mean, there's literally dozens of them. So
climate change, I believe in. I'm not yet convinced of how much it is man-made climate change. And then you've got the other side of that is what sacrifices are we prepared to make if it is entirely a man-made phenomenon? Because when we just talk about there's a crisis, and we need to be working with these leaders, we're just thinking with our emotion and not with facts. That's
why can't we work with these leaders and these organisations and these countries from the safety and the comfort outside the EU? America does it. Australia does it. Switzerland does it. You know, why do we have to be part of this club?
Debbie says here, Richard is wrong. What we need is reforming government to come fully out of the EU, including the Human Rights Bill. Then we can stand on our own and get immigration under control. Richard is out of touch, says Kirsty. Maureen said he is not speaking for me. I would still vote leave. No further conversation. It's done. No going back. I remind you, I was a Remainer. I'm not anymore.
Were you really?
Yeah.
Did you vote Remain?
Yeah, add it to the list of things I feel differently about now, Ben, than I did in 2017.
You've had a revolution.
A Damascene conversion. Honestly, yeah, I did. I thought, well, I was like, well, you know, we're probably better in it than out of it, aren't we? You're normally better to have support than not. And now I see some of the issues, particularly around control, won't surprise you, regular viewers, just being bulldozed through. And I think, thank God we're not part of that anymore. But we have had, I like the phrase Brino, which is Brexit in name only, to some extent. I don't feel we've had quite...
Well, either through incompetence or lack of will, Brexit hasn't been implemented properly. So we can't... I mean, Brexit was a vote solely about immigration, and immigration is worse than it's ever been, legal and illegal.
That's the irony, isn't it?
Totally betrayed. Brexit has been betrayed, and some of you are arguing today online that, you know, we're now taking these first steps back, nestling up cosily with the EU again.
Right, we're going to take a little break. You can do some mindfulness during this break, because we'll tell you after that what we think about mindfulness, but also a drug that's going to turn your granny into a supermodel, and it might also have saved your life. Stay with us. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Meghan Markle has reportedly finished filming her new show for Netflix. It aims to celebrate the joys of cooking, gardening, entertaining and friendship.
Yeah, this comes after Prince Harry's Netflix documentary, The Heart of Invictus, failed to hit the right note with viewers missing out on the top 10 in the streaming charts.
So, will this next venture be a success? Well, joining us now is royal commentator Kinsey Schofield.
I know I've talked to the both of you about Meghan Markle potentially running for president, so this feels like a bit of a dud to go from Meghan Markle running for president to Meghan Markle's Netflix series about friendship and cooking. So she's wrapped this recent show. They rented a home near hers in Montecito so that as their cooking set. And they're saying that this is really make or break for Harry and Meghan when it comes to their Netflix contract.
Do you think, Kinsey, it's fair to say that Meghan Markle has proved to be commercially a bit of a damp squib? Even in America, her native homeland, she's kind of Oprah without the audience when it comes to the cooking. Also, is she kind of, do you think... They saw her as the golden ticket, didn't they, to unlimited revenue, unlimited audiences, and it just hasn't happened.
Look, I think Meghan is a beautiful woman, and I do think she's talented, but I think how you treat people is incredibly important. And not only was she rumored to have been cruel inside Kensington Palace with several bullying allegations, but here in the States, Archwell Productions, their audio section, their scripted section, they've gone through several employees. And I think it's a reflection on the way that people are treated there. And I think as a viewer, you might get that. You might feel that way. And maybe that is where the appeal has been lost.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Hello, 11:21. Yes.
Go. Chaos.
Four voices in the room. We're joined by Jonathan Liss and Carol Malone, of course, alongside me and Bev on Britain's Newsroom.
Hence the chaos. Right, do you want to talk about Strictly Come Dancing?
Do you know what I do? Because this is not going away, is it? This is the glitter is very definitely off the glitter ball right now. Because it's been running now for a week, but in today's papers, there's the third man come into the mix. And there's a guy called James Jordan, remember him?
Yeah.
And he's not been accused of anything in particular other than he's alleged to have said to a contestant, one of his partners, whose name I can't remember, Georgina Buzova. He said to her, if you don't do what I'm telling you to do, I'll drag you across the floor. And he said, I don't care how much pain you're in. Unless you've got a broken rib, I'm not interested. Get on with it. So what we're hearing now is that, this is all this lovely show we see every week that's supposed to be a family show, and we're all thinking this is lovely. What's going on behind the scenes is allegedly hellish.
I would say James Jordan's come out and defended himself on this, and he said the clip that in which you've just quoted him, Carol, he was joking, and they actually showed it on the It Takes Two programme, where they were joking about what a taskmaster he is. So he's slightly resenting the fact that he's been dragged into these other complaints from Amanda Robinson and Giovanni Pierce.
What gets me about the whole thing is that a lot of the people who are coming out, a lot of the women who are now coming out of the woodwork are coming out and saying what happened to them, and because they were so scared. And what strikes me is the BBC knew about some of these complaints because they actually twice had to give a warning to the guy Graziano. They knew all this was going on, and they just didn't do anything. And now these people are speaking out, and we hear that they seem to care, the BBC, more about ratings than they do about what's happening to their dancers, which is outrageous. But the show makes them a lot of money; they don't want to damage it. However, the BBC have got to ask themselves why so many women. It's just women, mind you, that make a thing, not men, were too scared to complain.
Yeah.
And that... Go on.
Sorry, I thought you'd finished. Apologies.
Well, no, darling, you're presenting. You can interrupt me any time you want.
Jonathan,
don't tell her that. Don't say that, Michael.
I was just going to say the BBC's not got a good track record when it comes to standing by whilst scandal is brewing under its watch.
What are you referring to?
Well, I won't go into detail. I mean, there's a few examples, but...
The Jimmy Savile one, famous.
Oh, I see.
There is a history, isn't there?
And Martin Bashir?
Look, I've never actually watched Strictly before, but obviously we know that with television, it's not what you see on television is not always real. And behind the scenes, all kinds of things can be going on. Obviously, this particular television program, everyone is super friendly and pleasant, obviously. But the television is artifice, and there are, as with all workplaces, there are nice people who work in television, and there are nasty people who work in television.
Yes, but brutality against women and verbal and physical.
It's not acceptable. Of course, it's not acceptable, and there's a huge issue with it in the entertainment industry, in all forms. We look at what happened to Harvey Weinstein Me Too movement.
It feels a bit like that, actually.
With women, right. So I think that the problem that we have at the moment is that while sexual harassment in particular has now been brought so clearly to people's attentions as a result of Me Too, I think that workplace bullying is the one aspect that hasn't had its kind of Me Too movement. And you have a lot of... I hear so many stories of people in politics, in showbiz, who are notoriously awful to work with or for, and people say, don't work for that guy. Not that he's not necessarily going to touch you up, but he's going to bully you and make you feel small.
But, you know, when you... Back to Strictly, Amanda Abingdon, who was the actress who first complained, and she complained about... he's called Giovanni Panisse.
Yeah.
And at the time, she was made to sound like some idiot, hysterical woman who was just making a fuss over nothing. And she had the guts to go to her top lawyers and say, investigate these claims, get my videos from practice, and you have a look. And this lawyer, was Carter Rook, who went to the BBC with these complaints. So she had the guts to go to take that on. But I think it's such a shame that, you know, a lot of the women on this show, they're young women and they're frightened to complain because it's a career-making thing for them, or not. And I just think the BBC have tried to cover, it feels like they've tried to cover this up. They've warned these dancers in the past and the dancers took notice and they just gave them shiny new contracts.
Well, the investigations are going on, aren't they, at the moment, so we'll have to wait and see. But like you say, the shine is definitely coming off it, Carol. No doubt about it.
Right, shall we move on? The Telegraph. A drug has increased the lifespans of lab animals by nearly 25% in a discovery scientists hope can slow human ageing. It's been dubbed the supermodel granny drug.
I picked this for us, Viv. Not because you're a granny, but because this drug can actually boost your vision, boost your hearing, your muscle functions improved. It stops grey hair in its tracks. So as we get older, I mean, I'm way older than you, but as we get older, if we could get our hands on this, we're forever young.
This sounds like the Ozempic of the anti-ageing world.
We could look like you, Ben, in the end. You know, you look like...
Well, like Benjamin Button. I'm 16 next week.
Well, you look as...
I don't know, Jonathan. I wouldn't take it. I wouldn't take it. We are meant to age. We're meant to grow up.
Oh, we mitigate.
I'm not going to let the roots grow out. Just bear with me.
Bev, you look 10 years younger than you are anyway.
Thank you very much.
Oh, listen,
I don't want to walk in the building at 7 o'clock in the morning, let me tell you. But honestly, aren't we... This obsession, though, with anti-ageing, it's not healthy, is it?
Well, it's sometimes not healthy when people take drastic measures to halt ageing and to try and stay younger and youthful. I think that when you look at women who, and men as well, of course, but particularly women who are, say, 50 now, and then you compare it to pictures of women who are 50, say, 40 years ago, they look like the women 50, 40 years ago look like the women's mothers now.
Jennifer Lopez.
So people have, you know, science and technology have advanced massively, and there's no reason why people shouldn't want to, you know, feel great in themselves. But obviously, you look at people who age naturally, completely naturally, and they can also look fantastic. So
yeah, but you know, it's you know, you're saying you wouldn't take it now because you don't have to. The thing is, when you get to my age, you start thinking, give it to me.
I think, do you know what? I think if it meant I could, the one thing I hate more than anything about getting old is wearing specs. I hate it. You've got that.
Oh, you should. You can't get your. I've had my eyes lasered when I was 20. Yeah, I used to wear glasses in the classroom. I wouldn't wear them outside the classroom. For my own.
Because of your vanity.
Okay, you're going to say how old you are.
I'm 35 next month.
You're so tempting.
Oh my, really? I thought you were much younger than that. I thought you were much younger.
He's got babies.
I'm a big boy now. But I'd take it for health reasons. I'd take it if I could carry on going for a walk and my knees didn't ache and I could see and I could hear. Yeah. Then I can see the benefit in that. But I'd still be worried about it. It's a gene therapy, isn't it?
We should also mention probably the most important thing. It can prevent cancer as well, they're saying. It's because what it does is it stops the production of a protein called 1L11. And this is older people have more of this protein and multiply. So they stop the growth of that, and they're saying it could also prevent cancer. Well, so it's a no-brainer.
Medicine and pharmaceutical drugs do have their place, and you know, it's amazing miracles that they can work. However, I just think maybe we should just focus more on, you know, diet and exercise and preventative measures instead of always running to the latest injection and tablets. And
sometimes when things seem too good to be true, that's because they are as well. So we don't know what the side effects might be.
You can say that.
Well, look, if I didn't go to the gym and walk or watch what I eat, I'd be sat here with a gut, probably with a triple chin.
Well, it could take Ozempic then.
So I do. It's not just because I'm young that I look slim. I have to put some effort into it.
No, but you are. I think when people are younger, you don't think about the ageing process, but you as a woman, you especially think about it because women are judged on the way they look, and it's wrong, but it happens.
We are judged. We've only got a minute left, but I want your opinions on Biden. He said he would quit if he got ill, Jonathan, and guess what? He's got COVID. Is this going to be the start of the end for him with his presidency?
I think, on balance, that he should stand down. Obviously, that conversation has slightly moved on this week after what happened to Trump, and so we're not hearing as much about it. But you had Adam Schiff, a very senior Democrat, coming out yesterday saying that he thought Biden should stand down. And what we've had for the last few weeks is no one's been quite ready to say it on the record. But I'm talking about senior Democrats in office. And so once you have Schiff going forward, it might open the floodgates a little bit.
I think it's interesting. He says he'll only quit if there's a serious medical issue. I mean, how serious does it have to get? He didn't know what year it was last week. How serious? And, you know,
he called Zelensky Putin.
Exactly. And I just come back from Italy from a hotel there, and it was where the G7 was held. And the staff were telling me that he was there for the kind of conference, and he just wandered off in the middle of a big international photo call.
Extraordinary footage.
And Mrs. Maloney had to bring him back. The Prime Minister of Italy had to bring him back and say, stand there.
Do you not think it's a bit shameful of everybody, apart from the Democrats, in public anyway, have said Biden's fine, there's nothing wrong with him, but over a year ago, everyone else could see it. Do you not think it's shameful they kind of covered this up and tried to...
I think it's shameful of his family. I mean, you know, his wife and his family are saying there's nothing wrong with him, and is this how power corrupts people? I don't know, maybe the family want to stay there because of the power.
The latest news coming from America is that Nancy Pelosi, the former House Speaker, has taken him to one side and said, you need to step down now in a private phone call. So COVID might be the best excuse he could think of. Right, Jonathan, Carol, great to see you both. Right, moving on.
Sam, how's your news headlines? Back in a sec.
Very good morning to you. It's just after 11:30. The top story this morning, Sir Keir Starmer says he wants to use a summit of European leaders to push for joint action on illegal migration. The Prime Minister is currently hosting around 45 leaders at Blenheim Palace in Oxfordshire, where defence, security and energy are on the agenda. In the last few minutes, he used his opening speech to also reaffirm the UK's support for Ukraine, saying the threat from Russia reaches right across Europe. Widespread failures to properly prepare for a pandemic in the UK are expected to be laid bare later. The COVID inquiry is releasing the first of at least 8 reports into the crisis this lunchtime. Evidence heard so far at the inquiry suggests the UK's response was affected by public health cutbacks. In the US, Joe Biden has been forced to pull out of a campaign speech after contracting coronavirus. The White House says the 81-year-old is having mild symptoms from the infection, but that he is vaccinated, boosted and currently isolating while he continues his duties. It comes as the US president's facing growing pressure to step aside because of his age. And there are also reports that 2 top Democrats in the Congress have met him privately to express their concerns over his re-election bid. Here, a football club in Hertfordshire has paid tribute to one of the British men who's gone missing in Sweden. Juan Cifuentes used to play for Welwyn Garden City before disappearing alongside Farouk Abdul-Razik. Their families are appealing for information on their whereabouts amid fears the men might have been victims of a double murder. And banks have been told today to improve how they treat political figures following a review into so-called debanking. The UK's financial watchdog found most firms could deal with MPs better, so they're not subject to excessive checks or bans. The issue made headlines when Nigel Farage claimed he had his account closed because of his political views. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'm Sam Francis. Another update just after midday.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here's the latest look at the markets this morning. The pound will buy you $1.2987 and €1.1883. The price of gold just after 11:30 is £11,897.40. That's per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 8,247 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Thanks, Sam. We're joined now by a couple of star presenters who definitely don't need an anti-ageing jab. That's Tom and Emily of Good Afternoon Britain.
Well, not yet.
Sprightly as ever.
Very kind of you, Ben.
You're welcome. You can chuck me the fiver after the break.
Although we're very jealous because you get to announce the results of the first report from the COVID inquiry today.
Oh, I can hardly contain my excitement. Yes, it drops right at 12 o'clock, right in our time. We've got Mark White there ready to dig into the detail, tell us what we got awfully wrong.
You locked down too late. You didn't lock down hard enough, did it?
I imagine so.
The end.
It's going to mainly be the preparation that the country had. A big argument has been that we prepared for the wrong kind of pandemic. We prepared for a flu pandemic rather than a sort of SARS-type pandemic. But we'll see what it says.
You mean a respiratory virus?
Yeah.
Because both were.
I mean, Tom, COVID was flu-like in the end. I mean, flu cases dramatically went to zero during COVID, and then COVID cases went through the roof. It was interesting how that happened.
Yeah, I think that there is a argument that some of the advice initially, for example, the sort of let it spin around in the community stuff, worked well for flu, didn't work so well for COVID, but we'll see what they say.
I feel like Piggy in the middle right now.
We'll also be looking, of course, at the European Political Community Summit, which was organised by Rishi Sunak. It's yet another gift from Rishi Sunak to Keir Starmer. Not only low inflation, now high growth for several months in a row, but also a big conflagration of European Union leaders in Blenheim Palace.
Yeah, but hang on here. It looks like Keir Starmer wants to sign us up to the EU asylum policy in one way or another. Yeah. Oh, you take a few of our boat people, we'll take some of your refugees from the European Union. Is that what the British public want? I would suggest not.
Well, we've had many guests on today who say yes, the tide has changed, the opinion's changed, the public want to rejoin the EU. I don't know where they get that information from, maybe from the voice in their head, but I don't think it's true.
I think it will be really interesting to see the detail of anything that's thrashed out, because objectively, it would be good to have a returns agreement with France. If we could send people straight back to France once they arrive on the Dover beaches, that would be a very good thing. However, if the cost of that is taking tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of migrants who've just crossed across the Mediterranean instead, and we share around all these people across Europe...
Well, why do you think Labour want to build so many houses, Tom?
Well, because we're formally in
how about France do their job, £500 million a year, and stop boats launching off the beaches?
Well, apparently Macron says it's a sensitive topic.
Yeah, I bet it is.
Right, that and a lot more with Ben and Emily. Tom and Emily.
I'm not working again.
Ben. No, I know.
Tom and Ben, flower pot men.
Right. After the quick break, I'm going to teach Ben a thing or two about being mindful and the benefits that it can bring, or the fact that actually I don't think it's...
I think it's the other way around.
Other way around, you're going to teach me.
Yeah.
OK. Don't
Britain's Newsroom. Back in a sec.
Hello, very good day to you. Here's your latest GB News weather forecast coming to you from the Met Office. For many, there is going to be plenty of fine sunny weather around as we go through the rest of today, and feeling pretty hot at times too, but towards the northwest of the UK, there is a system here pushing its way in, and this is bringing quite a bit of cloud across many parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, and some rain too, especially across western Scotland and also parts of Northern Ireland as well. Further east, a bit drier here, and across much of England and Wales, it's a fine picture. One or two showers may develop, but I think on the whole we're going to stay dry with plenty of sunshine, and with that feeling markedly hotter than it has done recently. Temperatures getting to highs of around 28 Celsius. Cooler towards the northwest though, and here it is going to stay pretty cloudy as we go through this evening. Further rain to come, especially across western parts of Scotland. In the east around Aberdeenshire we may get some brightness breaking through, but on the whole a largely cloudy picture for much of Scotland, and across Northern Ireland too, with further outbreaks of rain as we go through the evening. But sticking with the fine sunny weather for many parts of England and Wales, lots of late sunshine to look forward to, and with those high temperatures during the daytime, it is going to be a warm evening as well. The cloud and the rain across northern parts does continue for a little bit of time, but I'm expecting the rain to ease a bit overnight, so it really just be over higher ground where we're going to see much, if any, rain overnight. Most places otherwise turning dry. Clearer skies across parts of England and Wales, though there could be some mist and fog patches developing in the west. It is is going to be a warm night. Temperatures not dropping a huge amount. Could be uncomfortable for sleeping for some of us. Then through tomorrow, still quite cloudy across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, though a bit brighter than today, and there will be a bit of rain pushing in towards the Outer Hebrides later on. Otherwise, it's looking mostly dry, apart from 1 or 2 showers perhaps, and plenty of sunshine yet again. And with that, temperatures are going to be even higher than today, likely to get in the low 30s towards the southeast.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark Meets and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Go and get another glass of that bubbly, you've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome back.
Snap.
You do it. I'm reading. You do it. I'll be the secretary here and read the emails.
Just welcome back. 11:40. Ben in for Andrew Pearce this week and next week, actually, and Bev Turner, of course.
We're looking at what you've been saying just there in the break, and here we go. What have you been saying? So Lizzie has said you have to have the will to deal with the migrants. Labour, not the Tories, have that will because both parties have their own. Labour, nor the Tories have that will because both parties have their own selfish agendas. And James has said, in reference to Ukraine, we've seen Zelensky there in Blenheim Palace this morning. James is complaining about how much money has gone to Ukraine. Sunak donated £8.3 billion during his reign as PM. Sunak pledged just 3 months ago £3 billion for this year alone and for every year into infinity. He did say, didn't he, that there is no amount. There is no limit to the amount that we would pay.
Yeah, I've asked people many times before. I said, where does this end? Is it a bottomless pit of taxpayer money? And the answer is always, yeah.
And nobody talks about peace. And nobody talks about a resolution.
No. And by the way, just to add, my Twitter algorithm is completely skewed at the moment. It's rather disturbing because most of the time, I don't know if you've seen these, but really horrific graphic videos of young men, hundreds of young men from the Ukrainian and Russian side being thrown to the front line, killing each other, in the most barbaric way, war crimes going on from both sides. And it's sad. There's a few clips showing that these men, when they are captured, they don't want to be fighting each other.
And it's going to be a money pit for years. Lots of very lucrative contracts to rebuild Ukraine at some point, going to huge companies. Right, what else have you been saying here? About Strictly Come Dancing, Grumpy Grandad has said these dancers set themselves very high standards. They don't want their celebrity making them look bad, so they expect the same amount of effort from these celebs as they put into it. And anyone with half a brain cell should know it's been going on to be really hard work. I think there is probably quite a lot of truth to this. These celebrities want the limelight, but they don't want to earn it. One said she had PTSD learning how to dance for a show. How could you get that? It's an insult to anyone who really has it. That particular actress, I think there's more to come out from that particular story. I think she did have an incredibly hard time.
Yeah, I'm not saying they're all like this, but is it a repeat of, say, the Dominic Raab situation where you've got someone who has high standards, wants the very best, and maybe in the case of a lot of Gen Zers, they think that pressure to perform well is bullying. Yeah. Robert, you say, with the amount of money we've given the French to stop the small boats, they should be begging to take them back. Oh, yeah. And also mindfulness, Bev. So we saw that great package from our colleague Eleanor earlier from Brianna Jai's mother, who said that she's dealing with the death of her child, or the murder of her child, through mindfulness. So what is mindfulness, Bev?
Well, you tell me, because you're quite a fan of mindfulness, aren't you? You do this, right?
I try and meditate when I can. Yeah, I do.
It's like being in the moment, isn't it? Being mindful of what's happening.
So we've got a little list. So mindful eating, maybe it involves when you eat, just to maybe think about, instead of watching the telly at the time or flicking through your phone, think about the flavours in your mouth and the texture of the food, maybe where it came from, the journey, it sounds a bit woo-woo, but the journey, you know, how the food got to your plate. When it comes to mindful moving or walking or running, try focusing on the feeling of your body moving. If you're going for a walk, maybe notice the wind in your hair, or, you know, how the sky's looking in the clouds. Again, it sounds very woo-woo, but...
No, I like it. But it's what we just used to call being bored.
Yeah.
So, you know, we say now that kids need mindfulness lessons because, do you know why? They're constantly overstimulated. So when I was growing up, you won't remember this, Ben, but when I was growing up, you sat on the bus watching the condensation on the window. That was mindfulness. Or you ate your breakfast and all you had to read was the back of the cereal box. That was mindfulness. Or you'd just have to sit and wait in a classroom until the teacher came along and you weren't given a screen to watch. That was mindfulness. And so what we've done is, and adults, we've overwhelmed ourselves with something to look at all the time, mainly this, and the telly. I mean, keep watching the telly. I'm not telling you not to do that. But because we occupy our brains all the time, we get overloaded and overwhelmed. It's no wonder we're stressed.
Yeah, I'm conscious of the fact that recently, in the last few months, maybe it is stress, whenever I've got a spare moment, I'm just flicking through my phone. Yeah. I'm not looking for anything in particular. I'm just flicking through Twitter.
And you live by the sea. You've got no excuse. You just need to sit and look at the horizon.
Well, do you know what? I was down by the seaside last night. I took a walk down to the Pebbles. We're just going to go to some live pictures, actually. Here's Blenheim Palace. All the world leaders. Vladimir Zelensky, Keir Starmer's there. I can't quite see the monitor. Is Georgia Maloney there as well?
Macron is no doubt there. There they are, stood on the steps of Blenheim Palace. As we say, Zelensky Ukraine not in the EU, not in NATO. Anyway, there doesn't seem to be an international event that he isn't there in his army fatigues. Keir Starmer setting out his vision, arguably, for his time in Number 10 on the beautiful steps of Blenheim Palace there in Oxfordshire.
This, of course, was a summit organised by Rishi Sunak. So it begs the question again, why did he call the election when he did? You're missing out on the chance to posture on the world stage among other leaders. You've also got the economic gifts that Labour have inherited and are now arguably taking victory laps for when they didn't earn it. For example, GDP growing higher than expected last month. Rachel Reeves saying it was just the start. I mean, come on, that wasn't anything to do with you. You've got Bank of England interest rates coming down potentially next month. That in turn will bring down mortgage rates. The cost of living's coming down. Why? Why did you call the election when you did? Unless you just wanted to get out. You couldn't be bothered.
Good inflation figures this week that Labour will claim credit for, but of course, as you say, that they can't claim credit for it. It'll be interesting to see what comes out of that summit. You'll be here tomorrow morning, won't you?
I am, yeah.
Good morning.
You're off, but I'll be here. We'll pick it up tomorrow. We're just going to go for a quick break, but come back shortly. We're going to be outlining more of the policies from the King's speech yesterday, and we're going to hear how Labour wants an independent football regulator. What for? This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Back in a sec.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates.
You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
No, it wasn't just us who celebrated the big football match on Saturday. Prince William was in the crowd in Dusseldorf and couldn't help but show his relief when England scored.
And over the weekend, it was also announced that the Prince of Wales is set to star in a new two-part documentary on ITV covering his mission to try and eradicate homelessness.
Well, let's talk about this and much, much more with Angela Levin, royal biographer, who joins us in the studio. I'm glad to hear that this documentary's been made, Angela, because I worried that he made this big announcement about homelessness and I thought, goodness me, here is somebody who could maybe do something about this. And then it's all seemed to have gone quiet.
He's been very busy with it, actually. He's gone all over the country to see different areas and how they have been, and to try and change people's attitude to homelessness, that they're people who need help and want to get back into a normal life. I think it was 2009, he slept out in the street to see for himself what it was like. And he also helped people who are selling the magazines, the big issue. So I think he was actually just covering the basic about what it was like for him and how he can now help other people. He and Catherine are putting £3 million straight away into that, and it's going to
Where
be...
does that money come from?
Their own foundation, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so they're not taking it from our tax or anybody else's. He wants to do this so badly because of his mother. You know, she took them to see people who were homeless, and even if he can't do everyone, he can help people be kind and understanding.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan.
GB News royalty with
Your perfect start to the weekend.
lucky us.
Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions.
That raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return.
And a few surprises along the way.
Might be cold in the studio.
That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9 only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, 11:50, Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Now, Labour say they will give more power to football fans and that they want to introduce an independent football regulator.
But would this ruin the beautiful game? Well, joining us now is sports journalist Harry Harris. Good morning, Harry. What do Labour mean by a football regulator?
Look, politicians can't run the country, so they're not going to be able to run something as complicated as football, I'm afraid. What do they mean by a football regulator? In my view, they haven't got a clue. There's a massive amount of proposals out there, none of which make much sense. They want the fans to be involved in the running of football clubs. I mean, it's delusional. You know, there is so much vested interest. And here we see Keir Starmer. I've got my own ideas how we can fund football through the pyramids, but anything that I suggest now would be exempt for Arsenal, because obviously Keir Starmer would want Arsenal to win the title at last. But
Suits
for me, yeah, I can imagine. But for me, you know, what we would like to see, if you want a fans charter, is a freezing of the continually rising of season tickets, of ticket prices. We'd like to see, I personally would like to see a transfer tax. I know Labour love a tax. So how about a transfer tax where billions is floating out of the game to agents, most of them perfectly okay, some of them not so. But, you know, why is the football world paying so much, billions a year, to football agents? Let's tax that.
What a great idea. I've never... Sorry to interrupt. Sorry to interject. What a great idea. I've never heard that before. But at a time when you are ripping football fans off with cable TV, with ticket prices, I'm an Arsenal fan, some of the highest ticket prices in Europe compared to, say, Germany, where you can go and watch a Bundesliga game for 20 quid. What a great idea.
Thank you. And what I would do with that transfer tax, I would send that down the pyramid all the way to grassroots football. I would have a survival fund where clubs who are in difficulty can tap into those funds. And another part of the football regulator, we don't want state-owned football clubs. But do we want a state-owned football industry? Of course we don't. And the football industry is riding against it, so they're not cooperating. So really it needs, I know they've spoken to everybody, but really the government, the Labour government, really needs some injection of real knowledge and understanding.
And one of the things, Harry, they're talking about is that clubs would have to seek approval to relocate to a different stadium or to change the name of a stadium. I'd love to be the government that has the time on your hands to get involved in that sort of thing.
Well, as I said right at the beginning, they can't run the country, they're not going to run football. But this is the Wimbledon clause. What we don't want to see, and what fans don't want to see, is that their club, like Wimbledon was, uprooted to Milton Keynes. I mean, that's a sensible suggestion, but it hasn't happened since. So why you have to have regulation to prevent it? Look, it's beyond me. It's clear that the Labour government, if now they're running this after the Tories have handed it over, it's a hot potato. They really need some expertise people to understand the game to actually take it forward.
That's right. Thanks, Harry. It seems like a problem that didn't need fixing, didn't it? Right, I've had a great week with you, Ben. Thank you so much. I'm on my holidays next week, but you will be back here. Let's hand over to Ben and Emily.
Or indeed Tom and Emily, because at 12 o'clock we were going to hear those first results from the COVID inquiry. What have they concluded about how prepared the UK really was?
And negotiations between Keir Starmer and European leaders. Could a deal be struck when it comes to small boat migrants, and at what cost could it come? All of that after your weather.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update, brought to you from the Met Office. It's going to be a warmer day than yesterday today, dry for much of England and Wales. However, it is much cloudier the further north and west you go. That's because weather fronts are really going to linger over here for the next few days across parts of Northern Ireland and western areas of Scotland in particular. Eastern Scotland should remain largely dry, and for the bulk of England and Wales it's going to be a dry and sunny day, the sunshine lasting well into the afternoon. It's going to be quite strong sunshine, and it will feel fairly hot in the sunshine. In fact, particularly across the southeast, where temperatures could climb to 28 degrees this afternoon, but widely will be close to those mid-20s, so warmer than it has been lately for sure. The rain's going to last across western areas and northern areas of Scotland well into this evening as well. It's a little bit fresher the further north and west you go as well, but it is feeling fairly humid even underneath this cloud. Some showers could push into parts of the Lake District, into northwestern areas of England. We could see some rain across the far west of Wales, some cloud pushing into the far west of Cornwall as well later on this evening, so some hazy sunshine to end the day. But further south and east for much of central and southern areas of England, as well as some eastern areas of Wales, it will remain largely dry and clear overnight. It's going to be a mild night tonight. It could be a little bit uncomfortable for sleeping. Temperatures could come close to 20 degrees overnight tonight, so widely in those high teens when we are close to that more humid air. Now, the bulk of the rain is more restricted further north and west through Friday, so that will allow a bit more in the way of brightness to develop for much of Northern Ireland and Scotland. So temperatures will rise a little bit more, particularly across southeastern areas of Scotland on Friday, but it's the peak of the heat to come on Friday. Temperatures exceeding 30 degrees, potentially across the south and east, widely in those high 20s as well. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's our summer treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest cash prize of the year so far. With an extra £30,000 in your bank account this year, you could take the ultimate financial holiday and send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. £30,000 could get you those nagging home improvements done, buy that brand new car, or just enable you to kick back and relax for the rest of the year. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number